Welcome to Classic Trials. If you're new here, my name is Alita. I'm a lawyer licensed in California and DC, and on this channel, we make sense of the law one bite at a time. In this series, we observe and analyze the play-by-play of some of the biggest trials that have shaped the public consciousness of the American judicial system. In this season, we're working our way through the case of California v. Erik and Lyle Menendez. Growing up in Princeton, New Jersey, and then Beverly Hills, California, these young men had everything they could ever want, or so it seemed, until one night on August 20th, 1989, they approached Jose and Kitty Menendez with newly purchased shotguns. Put on trial for murdering their own parents, they claimed self-defense, arguing they were terrorized in their own home by abusive parents until they could take no more. Which argument is more convincing? Come join and see for yourself. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope you guys are having a wonderful, wonderful Monday wherever you are coming from. So, how's everybody doing? How was your weekend? Was it good? I hope so. Let's see where folks are coming in from. All right, we've got Mary M says good morning from Munich, Germany. Good morning to you, Mary. Brittany Chanel says good morning, Alita. Currently vacationing in Atlanta, so good morning from Atlanta. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. I hope you're having a good time on vacation. I am. I mean, I'm a little bit jealous. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see. Jane Blackbird says hi from rainy Humboldt County. Hello, Jane. Debbie Faison Cook says hey from Florida. What's up? Hey, Debbie. Cheryl M says hi from Kansas. KP, hello from Texas. Let's see here. We've got some more folks saying hi in the chat. We've got Jessica Lambert says, hey, everyone. Let's see. We've got Aaron Morgan says, hello from UK. Got my cup of tea, my electric heat pad, and ready to join in. Oh, good. Very glad to hear that. Melissa Simuk says, this series is the best thing about Mondays. Awesome. I'm so glad that you are enjoying it. For sure. Let's see. B says, hi from Germany, Alita. Your cookies look delicious. Oh, thank you. So for if anybody is not familiar, I shared this on Twitter and on Instagram. But I had a cookie baking project this weekend, and it just turned into a straight up art project. It was a lot of fun, but it ended up taking up my entire Saturday for like one batch of cookies. And yeah, I have a tendency to sometimes get very focused on a particular project, and then kind of like getting super detail oriented. This is something that my kindergarten teacher even picked out about me. I apparently was the kind of kindergartner who, when it was recess time, everyone else would run outside when the bell rang. But if we were doing an art project, I would be the last one in there. Like, I need one more detail. So anyway, this is my current status, still the same. Kindergarten Alita is still the same. So Jessica Lambert says, hey from UK. Hey, how's it going? Shireen says, love that Alita matches the chair. Love it. I know. I decided why not? Let's fully embrace the basic Christmas that is this Christmas. But I'm glad that you are enjoying it. Donna Gray says, joining from a very cold UK. Woo. Well, I hope that you're able to at least have something to keep you warm, right? C. Dan Runs says, frozen northern Nevada. Ooh. The desert can get very cold. If you don't know, if you've not been in the desert during a cold season, or even in the summer times at nighttime, it can get super cold. Anyway, but yeah, stay warm. Jenergy says hello from Sicklerville, New Jersey. Love the green and red. Thank you. All right. Oh, Barney Cat says, I did a marathon this weekend, all caught up. Good. Awesome. Karen Vaughn says, hi from Concepcion, Chile. Awesome. Happy to have you here. Oh, and also I missed this one. Okay, I'm totally going to mispronounce this. I apologize. I see Elizabeth. I can get that one, but Ken 11, maybe, possibly, because hi from Saxony, Germany. So like the Germany tells me it's probably the CH is probably a cuss. Anyway, okay. I don't need to go into too much detail here, but welcome. Robbie Dobby, hello from Nova Scotia. Hi, Robbie Dobby. We've got Lottie Olson. Hi from Denmark. Hello. Jamie Beckham. Hi from Chicago. Hi, Jamie. Riley Arnold. Hi from Maine. Hello. Let's see. We've got Orty Kelleher from Western Colorado, and let's see. Maybe we can find a couple more. Or is that all of them? Oh, we've got Isabel. Hi from the Caribbean. Awesome. It's probably much warmer where you're at. Catlin says hello from Tulsa, Oklahoma. And let's see, we've got Iris of New York. Much love from New York. Hi, hello. And and also living life with and singing songs with Mallory. Hi from cold, snowy Utah. Hello, how's it going? All right. So there we go. We're all caught up on where folks are coming from. Oh, except we got one more that just came in. Anna Costello. I can see you in the regular chat. Sometimes StreamYard takes a minute to pick up, but relatively warm and sunny in Pennsylvania. Hello. Hey Anna. How's it going? Okay, so if you have forgotten, I know it's been a week. And Secret McSquirrel, I'm not here. What do you mean you're not here? If you're not here, then where are you? Hope you're doing well. As always. Okay. So, all right. So last week we had a few witnesses testify, but as it turns out, they weren't testifying in front of the jury for the most part. These were like, you can think of them like pre-trial hearings, essentially, except that they're going on in the middle of trial, right? When they send out the jury, they're talking about a particular issue. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to figure out what kind of testimony can come in, what kind of testimony has to stay out. And so sometimes it can be a little bit it can put people off balance when they're observing trial because they're like, wait, like, is this testimony? Is this not? But basically what they're trying to figure out is what kinds of topics are either side going to be getting into, and is that appropriate? Is that, going to run into some of the rules of evidence? Is there a way that they can discuss all of that ahead of time to prevent any sort of issues where the judge is having to try to tell the jury, like, ignore the evidence you just heard, right? Ignore the testimony that you just heard, because realistically, like, that's never really a great way to solve an issue like that, because it means that we've talked about this before, right? Where essentially you're telling the jury, don't think about purple elephants. Obviously, they're going to be thinking about purple elephants when you do that. So, so basically most of the witnesses that testified last week were like that. So Donovan Goodrow, we're going to hear from him again. That was a friend of Lyle's from Princeton. He's the friend who everyone thought was a student at Princeton because he was like living in the dorms and like working nearby. But he wasn't actually, and he was like Lyle's roommate in the dorms somehow. I having gone to a university in the United States, not Princeton, but a public school, right? Like I went to University of California, San Diego, UC San Diego. I've lived in the dorms on campus. It's weird to me that someone can essentially like con their way into living in the dorms on campus, but I kind of almost applaud it a little bit because it seems like that would be very hard to do, including at a place like Princeton, maybe especially at a place like Princeton. I don't know, or maybe that's easier because people just kind of assume things about students that I have no idea. But anyway, so he'll be back. we'll be hearing from him, probably not today, but in the next episode, most likely. We also heard from Robert Rand briefly. He's a journalist who he basically immediately was talking about the California Shield law issue, right? Because it sounds like the parties are maybe going to be getting into asking him about revealing some sources for some of his journalism, because he had released like 10 seconds or 30 seconds of audio of him talking to someone. But then the question was, does that open the door for them to ask about everything having to do with that person, or is he shielded from other information that they gave him just because he didn't release, or just because he did release 10 or 30 seconds of audio to the news, or to the news. Or news outlets, I should say, not to the news. Anyway, it's a Monday. we're going with it. Then there was Glenn Stevens, who was a friend of Lyle's at Princeton, an actual Princeton student. And he'll be back. He'll be back today. Then there's Richard Wenskowski, a bodyguard for Lyle, who, remember, Lyle had hired him after his parents, I say after his parents were killed, after he killed his parents, right? After he and his brother killed his parents. That's not disputed here. And he kind of told him this sort of story of like, yeah, we think that the mob killed them or something like that, or some kind of cartel or something. So I'm scared for my life and I need protection. And this is essentially why he hired him. That's basically what we heard from Richard Wenskowski last week. We're going to hear more from Richard Wenskowski here. And then we're going to hear from Amanda Adams, who I didn't preview her, like any of her testimony at all. Sometimes I'll do it briefly just to get an understanding of who these people are. But I think she is probably the clerk at Big Five Sporting Goods. I think, because that is a bit that I think I got from that. And then Glenn Stevens, the friend. So Shireen, why all these repeat witnesses? It's because of the fact that when they were testifying before, that was not in front of the jury. So that was just in front of the judge and just in with the parties and obviously with the defendants. So they were testifying for the purposes of basically figuring out like what kind of testimony can come in. Can they be called as witnesses? If so, what can they testify to? What kind of questions can be asked? So, and can the judge make any sort of rulings on certain of these issues to prevent improper information getting in front of the jury? So yeah, so that's basically it. Okay. So you guys ready for it? Ready? Okay. I am. I don't know about you, but I am. And so in between some of these pieces, there's going to be more legal argument for these kinds of evidentiary issues. And yeah, but so yeah, we're going to skip over those because we're just going to do the testimony here. Okay. Let's do it. And there we go. Boom. Okay. So we're back up with Richard Wenskowski, the bodyguard, first.
We'll have to finish with the handwriting issues tomorrow, and then we're going to put on conversations with Detective Zoller, which are in front of separate juries. If this court have the list from yesterday that says Tuesday, July 27th, because what I'm going to do is put Detective Zoller on, because in front of one jury and then the other, and then in front of both. So it's going to be conversations from September 17th and general investigative things as well, which would come in front of both juries.
We have a clue in general.
Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a second. This might not be the right
Well,
place.
you can talk about that off the record here. So you have a need for both juries tomorrow in the morning, is that correct?
Yes.
All right.
We'll just tailor it so that
Well,
we use them.
Well, focus on it so that if one jury can come in the afternoon and one in the morning, then we can do it that way.
I'll try to look at it.
But it doesn't have to be done that way, but if you can, then we can, when I excuse the one jury at this afternoon, I can at least tell them when to return with some
Okay,
better
I think
accuracy
I'm
than
gonna skip
today.
ahead just a little bit because this might be the wrong portion. Let me see.
For a while to,
Here we go.
so that this issue can be resolved.
He did view the transfer
Okay.
this morning, Your Honor.
Well, I'm just asking you,
Okay, but you didn't actually receive the call.
point.
That'd be fine. Shall I go?
Yes.
Okay, here we go.
Here on a Friday and Monday, over the weekend, Monday, I got the call from Lyle.
Okay, but you didn't actually receive the call. You got a message to call him back. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, and he asked you why you and the police detectives had been at Mr. Buffalo's.
yes.
What else happened?
I told him the police officers wanted to look at the store and see where it was located at. And I also told Lyle the police officers, wanted him to call if he had called me for Lyle to contact the cops.
And what did Lyle reply to that suggestion by you?
He said, no, that's all right. Something to that effect.
I think
he wasn't
we're
gonna
4
call.
for 4 on this
Okay,
one.
did you have
B.
any further conversation with him?
Shoulder pads,
He's
big
told me
hair,
he was coming
paisley
out
ties,
to New
mustache,
Jersey
maybe not big hair.
soon, and
yeah.
that he wanted to speak to me. I asked him about what, and he said he didn't want to talk about it on the phone.
Is that the end of the conversation?
Basically, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mrs. Earl.
Mr. Ritter?
No questions.
All right, did you wish to be heard further?
No, we submit that at this point.
All right, are you testifying from your own recollection of that conversation?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, then the court will permit the testimony. I find that there is relevance to the testimony. It does relate to the state of mind of the defendant and his consciousness of guilt and being told that the police would like to speak with him, and his, in essence, his declination or declining to do so. Right. Anything further now on other matters before we have the jury come out? Are we ready on the issue relating to Mr. Rand?
I believe his lawyer's in the hallway.
Yes.
All right. Okay, Mr. Wenskowski, you can step down and we'll get back to you very shortly.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
I wanted to make brief argument to the court before we actually bring Mr. Rand in.
All right.
Shall I?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to point out that,
Okay, we're going to skip through this.
our three issues.
With Mr. Goudreau.
This is more argument.
And that section
Oh, you know what?
states that such a person cannot be a judge.
Okay, this is argument.
With an agency at the time.
Let me pause real quick. This is argument about the California Shield Law issue with the journalist Rand. So, as I said, we're skipping through
The
this part.
information was taken or otherwise. That last
think-
sentence that I just referred.
No, that's the Bill Farr clause that applies to, that was adopted.
Here
Richard Wenskowski.
we
All
go.
right, sir, I'll remind you, you're still under oath.
Here we go.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, guys. Found it.
Wenskowski, sometime in late February of 1990, several months after you had guarded Lyle Menendez, did you have a visit from the Beverly Hills police detectives assigned to the case?
Yes, ma'am.
And where did they visit, please?
They visited me at the office of D.B. Kelly,
What city is D.B. Kelly in?
Piscataway,
Piscataway.
Piscataway, Piscataway.
And was one of the people that visited you, Detective Bill, was seated at the council table?
Yes, ma'am.
And was he with the partner officer?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you and Detective Zola go someplace?
Yes, we did.
Where did you go?
We went to Mr. Buffalo's in Princeton, New Jersey.
And what is Mr. Buffalo's?
It's a restaurant that specializes in hot buffalo wings.
And when you went to that restaurant, did you talk to the manager of the restaurant?
Yes, ma'am.
Shortly after.
I feel like the reason why they asked this is because wasn't there a question earlier about him? I can't remember if this was on the record or off the record, but wasn't there something about the Detective Zoller taking him to a strip club? So the fact that he said that this was a place, Mr. Buffalo's, they serve buffalo wings or something. It reminds me of Hooters, which is like people say like, yeah, you go there for the really great buffalo wings. That's usually, I mean, I've never been to Hooters, right? Like my understanding is that's not why people go to Hooters. Anyway, okay. That connection just happened. Random, but okay. Let's go
Shortly
on.
after that, did you receive a message to call Lyle Menendez?
Yes, I did.
How many days after yours and the detective's visit to Mr. Buffalo's was it that you got the message to call Lyle Menendez?
We visited the establishment on a Friday, and I received the message on a Monday, well, weekend, 2 days later.
Right, and did you in fact call Lyle Menendez back?
Yes, ma'am.
And from the area code that you called, could you tell what state you were calling?
Yes, California.
And did you in fact speak with Lyle Menendez when you made the phone call?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, could you tell us what the conversation was about, please?
Lyle wanted to know why the Beverly Hills cops and myself went to Mr. Buffalo, went to his restaurant. He wanted to know if there was a problem there.
And what did you tell him?
I told him there wasn't any problem, that the police officers just wanted us to go with them and to Mr. Buffalo's.
Did he ask you if you knew anything about why they were there?
Yes, and I told them I didn't really know why they were there. They were looking at the restaurant, wanted to see what kind of establishment it was. And
Sorry, I don't know why that's making me
no.
laugh.
Did you suggest anything to him that he should do?
Yes, I told him that he should call the Beverly Hills Police Department and ask them why they were there.
What was his reply when you made that suggestion?
He stated, no, he led me to believe he wasn't gonna make any phone calls.
Did you have any further conversation with him?
Yes, he stated that he was coming out to Jersey, New Jersey, in a matter of a couple of days or something, and that he wanted to talk to me.
Okay, thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Am I correct that 2 Beverly Hills detectives flew all the way across country to take you to a chicken wings restaurant? Is that what happened?
Well,
That was a speculation on part of the witness.
Sustained.
Well, where were you when the detectives first
I'm sorry, that was a funny first
came up to you
question.
and asked you to go to this restaurant?
I was at work and at the offices of D.B. Kelly.
And all of a sudden they appeared in
Yes.
around the end of
Jules, you're
February
right.
1992,
He's like the
was it?
grandpa from
Yes.
Princess Bride.
And they said, why don't you join us? And you got in the car and they drove you somewhere, right?
Yes,
And they didn't tell you where you were going or why they wanted you to come with them?
they said that they were going to Mr. Buffalo's and they wanted to look at the restaurant that Lyle had bought.
Did they say why they wanted you to go along with them?
No.
And so you drove over to the restaurant with them, and what'd you do when you got there?
Well, we sat down and had some very hot buffalo wings.
How were they?
Good.
Okay. What else did you
Why
do?
do I feel like this is more euphemism?
We spoke to the manager. We asked him if, I don't know if we asked him if Lyle was around or not. I personally didn't. But I know, I believe Les asked the manager, how's everything going, you know. I think possibly we did ask if Lyle was there. And he says, no, Lyle wasn't around.
And that's all that took place?
We sat and ate lunch and then we left.
Nobody took any photographs or conducted any more interviews other than what you just indicated?
No.
And then is it your testimony that a couple of days later, Lyle Menendez, you returned a call? Lyle Menendez had called your boss and had the boss call you back?
That's correct.
You called him back, correct?
Yes,
And he wanted to know what the problem was?
yes,
You told him you didn't know what the problem was?
that's correct.
You told him you didn't know why you were taken to the chicken wing restaurant, correct?
That's correct.
He asked you how you were doing,
Yes, he did.
and that was the end of the conversation.
Basically, and beside the point that he said he was coming up to New Jersey in a couple of days and he wanted to talk to me.
And that's the last time you spoke with him or talked to him.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused.
Thank you, Ron.
Okay, so that's a,
All right,
that's a
and
funny
Ray, will your
side
next
thing.
witness?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
We've applied to an extra jury.
okay. We'll get the other jury in, and as soon as that jury arrives, we'll proceed. So you folks just stay where you are, and we'll get the other jury from next door.
All right. So that was super short because we
And
basically.
the Erik Menendez
got
jury
everything
has
from him
entered the courtroom, and a belated good day to you all.
Okay, so now.
Actually, we just wanted to make sure you would get
So
acclimated.
that was just in front of Lyle Menendez jury because that was for Lyle Menendez, right? That was a witness that basically was just testifying as to Lyle Menendez, the experiences of him living in New Jersey. He's away from Erik. Erik's was in California around that time. So now Amanda Adams is going to be a witness for both cases. So that's why they brought the jury back in.
Acclimated in the courtroom next door, and wanted to make sure everything was okay over there.
It's home now.
I apologize, but as I told this jury, and this jury, unfortunately for them, this jury was pretty much kept in the jury room here for a good period of time as well, that these trials, any trial, whether it's civil or criminal, and especially criminal trials, result in hearings that occur periodically where the court has matters to discuss with counsel. When we know in advance that these things are going to happen, we try to give you notice of it so that you don't have to come in and be inconvenienced. But sometimes these things just sort of crop up out of nowhere and have to be dealt with as they arise. And that's what happened today. And it took a little longer than we had anticipated, but we're sorry for the delay. A couple things. I've mentioned this before. You should not speculate or be concerned about or wonder about what it is that we discussed during those hearings. Those are just legal matters that deal with things that the court has to resolve before the trial proceeds, and you shouldn't be concerned about those matters. And also, likewise, when there is evidence or testimony being heard by only the Lyle Menendez jury, you should not be concerned about or wonder about what is transpiring during those sessions. those matters only relate to the Lyle Menendez jury and don't concern you, and you must not speculate or be concerned about them in any way. Let me ask those 18 of you who just came in whether any of you have seen or heard anything about this case since the trial started.
No.
Okay. All right, then let's proceed. The people may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. People call Amanda Adams.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause opportunity before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please take the stand and state your name for the record.
Debbie, I'm saving this and I'll answer it in a bit.
My name is Amanda Ann Adams Geyer,
Will you spell your last name?
G-E-I-E-R.
All right, Mr. Kuriyama?
Can you pull the microphone up? I can call you.
Yeah.
We got big hair today
Yeah.
and a very floral dress. I feel like this kind of floral was also very much in style in the 90s.
Thank you, Your Honor.
And the big glasses. Big glasses
Ms.
were very
Adams
much in
Geyer,
style.
directing your attention to August 18th, 1989. Were you employed?
Yes,
Where were you employed?
Big Five Sporting Goods in San Diego on Convoy Street.
Is that at 4838 Convoy Street?
Yes, it is.
Were you working on August 18th, 1989?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall when it is you came onto your shift
12:30.
in the afternoon?
Yes,
Now, what was your position there?
I was the second assistant manager.
Do you recall on that day making a sale of two Mossberg 12-gauge shotguns model 50406?
Vaguely, yes.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes, you may. Yeah. This relates to an exhibit.
Yes, Your Honor. It's Adams Geyer. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 52. Several documents. So I'm going to ask you to take a look at what is a yellow sheet of paper that's entitled Firearms Transaction Record Part 1 Interest State Over the Counter. Do you recognize that form?
Yes, I do.
And how do you recognize it?
These are the forms we use when we sell guns in our store.
Do you recognize the writing on that form?
Yes, it's mine.
Is a copy of that form a duplicate? Is this a duplicate of that
Yes,
form?
it is.
All right, we have two of those. If you intend to use those during the trial or during this witness's testimony, we can get the other one for the other jury.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Give
Carol,
your,
I noticed this too.
co-counsel a
How
chance
she
to
just
do
like
that.
immediately was like, I'm going to lurk in the background.
Yes, the blow up of Exhibit 52. Thank you.
Shall I stand here, Your Honor? I mean,
Yes, that would be fine. Thank you. All right.
Now, what does this form tell you?
Ellen, not Sarah Lee.
This
Is that
tells
how they did
you
that in the 90s?
Who purchased the gun,
Curling up and then down?
the type of gun that's purchased, how many, the price they paid, phone number, address, who signed, purchased, who was the employee who took care of the sale of the gun.
Okay, taking a look at this form, the face of this form, who filled out this form?
I filled out the top portion above where the questions are answered.
And those are numbers 1 through 7?
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes. I also filled out the date next to the signature, and I filled out the bottom portion from the driver's license down to my signature at the bottom.
Okay. Would you take this yellow highlighting pen, with the court's permission, and highlight the areas of this particular form that were filled out by the purchaser? Yes.
B, that's not a bad idea.
Did you also do that on Exhibit 52.
The only unfortunate thing is that my hair doesn't hold curls very well. So like it doesn't do big very well.
Ma'am, you've indicated that you filled out the portions 1 through 7, correct?
Yes.
Would you describe for the jurors how it is that you fill these forms out, what information you need to take down, what information you require to be shown by the customer?
Okay, the customer must produce a California state driver's license. When we do the sale of the gun, in this particular case, at the time we were taking the person's driver's license, writing it down ourselves in the top portion. We asked the person if the addresses on the driver's license were current at that time. If they say no, then we proceed to have them give us a verbal correction on the address and write that down. We write down the driver's license number.
Do you recall at this time whether or not the person who presented this particular driver's license, that of Donovan Gaudreau, had indicated to you that there was a change of address?
Yes, the person making the purchase said that the address was not current on the driver's license and gave me the address that you see now on the form.
That being in section 563 August Street, San Diego, California, 92117.
Stay
Correct.
home. Thanks so much for your super chat.
When the person comes in with a
I don't
driver's
know.
license, do
So,
you
I'll see
check
it when
the
everybody else
person
does, I
to
guess.
see whether he is similar to the person described in the on the driver's license?
Yes, we do.
Now, it indicates that the height of the Donovan Gaudreau is 6'1" and the weight is 165, correct?
Yes.
Did you look at the person that was presenting this driver's license to see if he generally matched that in stature, physical stature?
Yes.
In line 9, you place down a CDL. What does that mean?
California driver's license.
And in line 10, what does that number, that letter and the following numbers designate?
That's the number on the driver's license.
And you wrote that yourself?
Yes, I
You
did.
verified that yourself?
Yes.
With respect to the other portions of the form, could you describe for the jurors what that information indicates?
The bottom half?
Yes.
That indicates the type of shotgun or the type of gun that was purchased, whether it be a rifle or a shotgun, the model number of the gun, which is the 50406, the caliber of the gun, which is the 12 gauge, the serial number on that particular gun, which is the 2K452565, and the manufacturer, which is Mossberg.
And then finally, there's a line 18. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And at that time, you were the second assistant manager?
Yes.
And then did you place the date?
Yes, I did.
Going to the reverse side of Exhibit 52, the first sheet, which is a yellow sheet, there appears to be 2 receipts, correct?
Yes.
Now, what is that?
Those are the receipts for the purchase of the 2 guns. If you're purchasing more than 1 gun, each gun is rung up separately into the register to show that there were 2 guns purchased.
I'm putting the receipts face up rather than the reverse side of the sheet.
I'm so glad that we have
What
an opportunity to
information
see this
is reflected
document.
on the receipts
It's so
themselves?
detailed.
The date that it was purchased, the store number it was purchased at, the 4473 number, which is the federal form number assigned to the purchase,
In all
the amount
actuality,
of the
this is probably
purchase
the biggest
plus
that they could
tax,
possibly print
and
it
the
at
amount
Kinko's
of cash
or
tendered
Xerox.
and the change, as well as the receipt numbers at the bottom.
How much is or at that time, how much was the Mossberg 12 gauge shotgun? at
Was-
that model?
It was $199.99.
And it indicates that the person gave you $220
Correct.
and you gave change back of $601.
Yes, the cashier did.
Does that indicate whether this was a cash transaction?
Yes.
Was it in fact a cash transaction?
Yes, it was.
Now, there are two receipts, correct?
Yes,
Now, why is it that you have to have two receipts?
it's just company policy. We show that we ring up each gun separately as a separate transaction to show that they were both paid for.
That's a rule of Big Five?
Yes.
There are two other documents among Exhibit 52. I'll show you first of all. Okay. Go to the next page on 52. The listing for page 29. Do you have the original to this before you?
Yes, I do.
What form is this?
This is the logbooks that are kept in our store by our store, indicating when and where guns were signed out to or sold. It's a record kept strictly for our company to keep track and inventory our guns.
Which exhibits are you referring to?
This is in 52, Your Honor.
Wait, is this true? There were no
And
no
the
pictures on IDs
Corresponding
back then?
exhibit, the blow up is what?
I-
It's 53.
I need to
Or
ask
is
my
it
mom.
ABC or?
I think
This
she's
one
probably on a
happens to
plane right
be-
now, but I need to ask her.
Unmarked at this time. There's a 52 A and B, which is the yellow sheet, front and back. There is page 36, which is C. So this would appear to be D.
Or has it not been marked?
It has not been marked. That's the grand jury. Yeah, it does not have a green superior court.
All
Andy
right,
the Game
go ahead.
Maker,
Thank you.
thanks for your super
So you're
chat.
designated by page
He
number.
says,
page
OMG,
29.
I have the same dress
You
in my
recognize
closet.
that.
Yes, I do.
What
I
is
know,
that?
Andy.
That's the logs
I
that
know
we
all
keep
about
in
the
the
things
store
you
to
keep in your
keep track
closet. I'm
of
kidding.
when guns came into our store from the warehouse
having you
and
here
when
again,
they were
brother.
signed out and sold, either transferred or sold to a customer. This is a corresponding half of another sheet that has the guns and the actual serial numbers listed.
Okay, so
All right, that has now been marked with a sticker 52D, is that correct?
yes, I'll put the 52.
All right, and the enlargement will have the corresponding designation
Okay.
53D.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, fair.
Okay, with respect to,
So
let's
then-
mark this,
So then I guess there were
52D.
photos on. That's what I
This
that's
is
what I
a
thought.
Big Five document,
Yes,
and there's a corresponding sheet you indicated.
yes,
Now, how is that set? Do you have a logbook?
yes, we have a logbook.
Okay, thank you,
Now,
Charlotte.
here it says Federal Firearms Record. You indicated there was a corresponding sheet.
Yes, there's a sheet that would match the other half of that sheet with the same page number. And for every line that you see there, there's a corresponding line with the
Yeah,
gun
Sophia
serial
Holm,
number, the date it came
I'm
into the
tracking you,
store,
my
the
driver's
type of gun it
license.
is. And then the lines here where there are customer signatures means that those persons bought the gun that it matches on the other line.
So the log on the reverse or the matching side would list guns as they came into your store.
Right, correct.
And would that account for the differing dates?
Those dates
Yeah.
there are when the guns were purchased and signed out by the customer. So the variance in dates is just when that particular gun was purchased. They're not purchased in any particular order. It's just when that customer purchased the gun. The other sheet would have consecutive dates as to when the shipments came into the store. But the dates on this side of the log sheet are just random as to whenever the gun was purchased or left the store.
With respect to the purchase or the sale of a Mossberg shotgun that was made on August 18th, is there the sale reflected on this document 52D?
Yes, it
and
is.
also 53D.
Yes, it is.
Would you mark in yellow on 52D that entry, and then also on the enlargement 53D?
Do you want me to take it out here?
Yes. respect to 53D, the date designates the date of the sale.
Yes.
What is the 415 designate?
That is the 4473 number, which corresponds to the yellow sheet up in the corner. That's the firearms transaction number.
And the customer, do you watch the customer sign that document?
Yeah, we'd watch them sign it, but it's not crucial that we have an exact signature. This is strictly for our records to show when and where the gun purchased. Sometimes the salesperson will fill it out, but the customer signed in that instance himself.
And with respect to the date and the city, who usually fills that out?
It could have been done by the customer, or it could have been done by the salesperson, whoever's at the counter waiting to sign out the gun after it was paid for. Sometimes they'll fill that information in, so when the customer gets back to the counter, they just have to sign. Or sometimes the customer fills out the whole thing as far as the signature and the address.
Andy the Game Maker, thanks for the super chat.
I made the sale, but
That's a
I
good
didn't
idea. I
necessarily
might have to do a
sign
Menendez
out
trial
this
fashion show when
portion
it's
once
over.
the gun was paid for.
However, you did fill out 52A, this form.
Yes, I filled out that form.
Going to 52C. That's page 36.
Seamus Donahue, yes. This is, I think, what the prosecution is trying to drive home here.
You've indicated that 2 Mossberg shotguns were sold to the same customer, correct?
Yes.
Looking at 52C, and this will be the corresponding 53C. Do you see an entry that was made regarding the purchase of a second Mossberg shotgun by the same customer?
Yes, line 13. On the right side. Mm-hmm.
Can you take that yellow pen and do the same thing that you've done on the other entry? It is on 52C. You're indicating line 13. And then also on the large bits.
Yeah, the brothers are arguing that this is basically an extended sort of self-defense situation, that they basically snapped because of years of abuse of all kinds.
Do you remember about what time the sale took place?
To the best of my knowledge, and I'm not positively clear on this, but I do recall the sale being in the evening, sometime around 8 o'clock or after.
Do you recall any of the particulars about the sale itself?
The only particulars that come to my mind are when the customer came into the store. I believe I stepped out of the office, the customer standing right there where the gun counter is, which is located right next to our office, and indicated that he wanted to buy 2 of the shotguns and pointed at him. And I recall vaguely asking if he wanted to see the guns. Most customers like to look at them and play at them first before they purchase them.
No, I'm gonna move to strike that, it's not responsive.
Objection overruled. The answer will stand. Please ask next.
Yeah,
Thank
she's
you.
giving context.
What happened next?
And the person said, no, that's what I want. And from there, I just went in the back, brought the 2 guns out. We did the paperwork. Person went to the front to pay the cashier. And at that point, I don't really remember whether or not I signed out the gun or if one of my part-time employees signed out the gun.
On the second transaction, the purchase of the second gun, did the customer give you, again, $220 cash?
He would have given it to the cashier. I was not at the register.
But does the receipt indicate that?
Yes.
And that change of $6.01 was returned to the customer,
Yes.
just the same as the first transaction?
Right.
according to the paperwork that you have in front of you, taking a look at the receipts, was any ammunition purchased on that day?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
Are you referring to something that happened in her store?
Yes,
College?
with those documents in front of her.
According to these
Objection
receipts,
Go ahead.
according to these receipts, they do not indicate the ammunition was sold, but we do not ring up the ammunition on the same receipts. So I have no knowledge of any ammunition being sold, but it could have been sold.
Do you recall in this transaction that ammunition was sold?
I do not recall.
Are you familiar with that particular model of Mossberg shotgun?
Yes, I am.
How many shots does that shotgun have?
It'll hold 5 in the receiver and 1 in the chamber if you take the plug out. If you don't take the plug out, it'll hold 2 in the receiver, 2 in the chamber, 1 in the receiver. 2 in the receiver, 1 in the chamber.
Meaning it could be as little as 3, but as much as 6?
Exactly.
What is it that you have to do to the shotgun to make it capable of being a 6-shot?
There is a 6 to 7 inch dowel that is in the receiver that you must unscrew the barrel and remove.
And what does that entail?
You just have to unscrew the barrel where it's attached to the receiver, slide the barrel off. There'll be an empty hole there where the screw went in. Tip it upside down. There'll be a 6-inch dowel, and you have to pull it out. Sometimes there's a little rubber gasket on it. You just have to pop it out.
Hold a moment, Your Honor. Geyer, how long do you think that this transaction took?
Just guesstimating probably 15, 20 minutes.
Could you identify the person that made the purchase?
No, I can't.
Are there any other forms of identification? I know in this case, the person presented a California driver's license. Are there other forms of identification that are acceptable?
Military identification is acceptable only if they have proof of residency in the state of California. Any identification used has to prove residency in the state of California.
For example, what other
And it has to be a picture ID. For proof of residency,
Okay, so
along with
it has to be a
military
picture
ID, probably their orders stating how long or when they were assigned into the state. Something like a phone bill with an address on it dated 6 months prior. Or car insurance, something that's dated 6 months prior showing a California state and their name, address.
How old do you have to be to purchase a gun? At that time, anyway, in 1989, how old did you have to be?
For shotguns and rifles, 18.
You had to be an adult.
Yes.
Were there more than one person there when you made this transaction? Actually making the purchase?
I don't recall there being more than one person up at the counter.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time, Ron.
Cross-examination?
Thank you.
Are you using a double last name,
I
Adams
just
Geyer?
got married in May, so I'm actually using Geyer, but
Okay.
all the other stuff had Adams on it, so.
All right, but it's okay if I call you Mrs. Geyer. That's
Sure,
all right with
whatever you like.
Now, Mrs. Geyer, do you remember when it was that anyone first brought this particular transaction to your attention?
I was in March of 1990.
And in March of 1990, who was it that first brought this transaction to your attention?
It was Les and his partner.
Detective Zoller
Yes, Detective Zoller.
and his partner, Tom Linehan?
I don't recall his name, but
Where was it that you first came in contact with Detective Zoller?
at Big Five Sporting Goods.
The store that you work in?
Yes.
And do you recall what date in March of 1990 that was?
Good catch, Nicole.
March 14th.
I think that's
And
exactly
do you
why
know
he
that,
said so they had
have
to
you
be
been
adults.
provided with copies
Yeah.
of your
They
previous
keep calling them
statements?
kids.
Yes.
That's how come you remember that
Yes.
date? Okay. Have you also been provided with a copy of your testimony from last year before the Los Angeles County Grand Jury?
Yes, I have.
I guess Andy's going to find Miss Adams' dress.
Now, do you recall that when
If he sells
Detective
24
Zoller
copies
showed you
with my promo
the
code Legalbytes.
ATF form, that's how
Okay.
I'm going to refer to that top
Nice, Andy.
document, the firearm transaction record. It's commonly known as the ATF form, isn't
Right.
it? For alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Correct.
When he showed you that form in March 14th of 1990, you told him that you did not remember the sale at all,
Right.
correct? You had no recollection of who bought the guns, male, female, 1, 2, what time of day it was, nothing,
Not at the top of my mind, no.
okay? And you said you didn't remember the driver's license specifically that was used for the sale.
Meaning,
He asked you if you remembered the license that you were shown. Do you remember telling him you didn't?
I don't remember. Yeah, I remember telling him I didn't recall it.
Okay. And do you recall Detective Zoller asking you if the person, the purchaser, who filled out the form resembled the picture on the driver's license?
Yes, I do remember him asking.
And do you remember telling him that you don't remember if he did or not, but you assumed that he did?
Right, correct.
And do you recall that Detective Zoller showed you what are called photo lineup cards?
Correct.
And that's a card that has the pictures of 6 people on each card?
Correct.
And he showed you 2 different cards.
Yes.
And you selected a number of a person who you said looked familiar to you, but not in reference to the sale because you didn't remember the sale. Is that correct?
Correct.
Last August 1992, you testified before the grand jury, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it true that you testified under oath before the grand jury that you didn't recall whether the individual to whom you sold the guns was alone or with somebody?
Correct.
And you did not, when you testified before the grand jury, give any specifics of this transaction at all. Nothing about the time of day, nothing about the person being alone at the counter, nothing.
Correct.
And you have never stated, at least in any of the reports or the testimony that you've reviewed, you never said anything about asking the person if the address on the license was their most recent address and receiving some new information, have you?
I remember stating that before, but I don't know if it's been on any of the forms for those testimonies, but I have been asked that before and I have stated it.
So you think you told someone that before, but you've read your reports and you read the testimony and it doesn't appear in
It's not on the grand jury testimony. No, it's not.
And it's not in the report of March 14th, is it?
No, it's not.
And it's not on the report of June 21st, 1993 that you gave to Detective Zoller the last time you spoke to him?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Now, did something happen between last August and now that makes you think you remember this transaction?
After looking at paperwork and reviewing schedules and stuff, certain things come back to you. I mean, I can't point out a picture of who was there to make the purchase, but, you know, looking at the situation and the circumstances and going back in time as to what was going on at that time in the store, some things do come back.
So
at the time that Detective Zoller talked to me, no, I did not remember anything off the top of my head.
And you apparently didn't remember anything as of last August either. So when was your paperwork review?
It's been reviewed all along.
So you're making certain deductions, aren't you, based on who was working what shifts and who else was working at the store? You're sort of deducting your way back to this transaction.
Yeah.
You don't really remember the person at all, do you?
I don't remember the person as far as looks or anything. I do remember looking at the transaction, the receipts, who was there, I do vaguely remember parts of the sale, but I can't point out a person per se. And I do know the procedures and what would have went on. So I can say that, yes, I did look at a driver's license. Yes, I did write this down. Yes, I did ask if this address was correct. So
Because
those
you
parts
always
of the
do
sale, I always do that.
All right, so some of it is deduction and some of it is your usual custom and practice. Is that right?
hmm
But none of it, I think you said before, is actually the picture in your mind of this event. Is that correct?
As far as a person, I didn't spend a lot of time with the person. The people I remember the most are people who
Man,
want to sit there and
this mic
discuss
needs a pop
guns. And
filter. I'm just
those
going
are
to say
people
it.
who repeatedly come in our store, ask questions, play with the guns. This was a, quick in and out. I want 2 of those and leave it at that sale.
Well, when did you remember that part? The I want 2 of those part. What in the paperwork, for example, that you reviewed told you that?
Nothing just looking at the circumstances, looking at our schedules of who is working, looking at my schedule. Just, if you want to say it's deduction, you can say it's deduction.
Okay. Deduction as contrasted with memory.
Right. I did tell this to Cindy Erdelay, your investigator, when she spoke to me a while back also.
I know, she spoke to you in May 27th, and that was actually the first time anybody ever wrote down or you ever told anybody about these details, and then you spoke to Detective Zoller less than a month later.
Now you're going
All
on
right.
with this.
Sorry. All right. So you spoke to
Enough with the
Cindy, my
soliloquy.
investigator, May 27th, 1993,
Kit Kat,
right?
I agree.
And
She
to the
does
best
seem
of your
like a nice
recollection, is
lady
that the
and
very
honest.
first time you told anybody the result of your deductions?
Anybody who's in contact with this case, I might have discussed it with my other manager who was there when we've had other discussions about the
And
case.
All right, so are you relying to some extent then on what yet other people have been deducing, like your managers?
No.
Okay, so Cindy is the first person connected with the case that you gave these
Yes.
deductions to. Okay. Now, was this time in August '89, close to the beginning of the hunting season?
It's close to right before dove season is September 1st.
Okay. And at that time of year, just before the start of the dove hunting season, does that Big Five store usually have a lot of shotgun ammunition, hunting type ammunition, stacked on the floor in front of the gun counter?
Yes.
And is it your belief that on August 18th, 1989, there were such stacks of shotgun game ammunition on the floor in front of the counter?
Yes.
Now, if I understand your testimony, the procedure would be that I came to you and I said, I want to buy that gun. You would then make out the ATF form. That would be
Correct.
the first thing.
Correct.
Okay. And I'd give you identification and you'd make out your part and I'd sign my part.
Correct.
Now, at that point, you don't hand the gun over to me, though. I
No.
have to go pay for it.
Correct.
So I take that ATF form, that yellow form, and I go to a cashier and I tender to the cashier the money necessary to purchase the gun.
Correct.
And if there are 2 guns there, that cashier is going to ring it up as 2 different transactions.
Correct.
And if there are 10 guns, she's going to ring it up as 10 different transactions.
Correct.
And every register receipt for each individual gun will then be stapled to the back of that form for your inventory control for the federal government.
Correct.
Now, if I pay at the cashier, I come back to you now with the receipts attached to the form, correct?
Mhm.
And at that point, you're ready to give me the guns, but we have to log it out.
Correct.
And so that's when the entries are made in the logbook,
Correct.
and then you hand me my purchase.
Correct.
Now, there's nothing stopping me after you've handed me those guns, and as I'm walking back towards the cashier, from picking up boxes of the shotgun ammunition that's stacked in front of your counter and paying for it on the way out.
Correct. Could also have been paid for at the time when they went up to pay for the guns.
Sure, and that wouldn't show up on the receipts that are attached to that form.
Correct.
Because ammunition sales do not have to be attached to any kind of federal form.
Correct.
And did I understand you correctly? It's the store policy, in fact, to ring up the gun sale just as the gun sale.
Correct. It was at that time. Now the computers are different, so it's done a little differently.
Okay, but we're interested
Right.
in 1989. Now, just drew a complete blank. It's interesting.
I feel you.
Did the
feel you,
store
Leslie.
in 1989 carry more than one brand of shotgun shell?
Of shotgun shell, yes.
And can you tell us, for dove hunting season, what are the size shotgun shell, the size of the pellets that are most suitable for that sort of hunting?
For dove hunting,
Mm-hmm.
generally 7.5 or 8.
And do some of the shot shells, in fact, for dove hunting, say dove load right on them?
Yes.
Now, is it your recollection, first of all, do you still carry this model number, this Mossberg
Yes, we do.
50406?
Yes, we do.
When Detective Zoller came down there in March of 1990, did you show him one?
I don't recall whether or not I showed him one.
Has anybody connected with the prosecution in this case contacted you and asked whether or not you've got a 50406 around?
Maybe not me particularly. There's 3 other managers in the store, so they.
But I don't have him here, so did they contact you?
Not to say whether or not I had one in the store at that time. I don't recall anybody asking me.
What I'm asking, in case I'm confusing you, is has anybody from the prosecution asked if they could either get or examine or buy a 50406 Mossberg from you now?
I don't recall.
And is it your testimony that this particular model shotgun from Mossberg always has that wooden dowel in it?
Yes, it does.
Now, is it your testimony that the dowel slides into the barrel, or does it slide into the
receiver?
The receiver. That's where you would load the shot shells.
Correct.
Okay, so it's just a piece of wood, isn't it?
Yes.
That fills up part of the receiver.
Right.
So you can't put more than 2 shells in there.
Correct.
And all you have to do is unscrew the cap at the end of the receiver, and out spills the dowel.
Correct. Well, you have to pull it a little bit because it's got a rubber gasket on it, but it's fairly simple to get out.
Okay, you said sometimes it does, and sometimes they come without it.
Without the rubber
Gasket.
gasket, yeah. Different models have different.
But it's not hard to remove, and as far as you know, most people who buy shotguns remove them.
They can't remove them if they're going to use them out in the hunting field. It's required to have them in there for fish and game. You can't have more than 2 shells in the receiver. But for any other use, home protection, I don't believe it's against the law to take it out.
Okay, and whether it's against the law or not, you don't know if people who even use it for hunting are taking it out. Nothing happens unless there's a game warden around.
Right,
catches them.
exactly.
Hang on. Wait. Let me...
Can you add the promo grift to the pin?
Sorry, guys. What?
Say it again. Everyone's listening.
What are you listening?
You're live.
Andy, your audio is everyone. What is happening?
Just say it.
Oh, sorry. No, can you add the grift to the pin?
I can't. Yeah, it's
Add
not
the
coming
grift to the pin.
to the pin.
Copies.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Sorry, guys. Okay, we're going back to back to the actual testimony that we're here for. Sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
Any examination by?
Lyle Menendez.
No, Your Honor.
All right, any redirect?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, so now there's going to be a redirect. Let me get some questions in here. So here's Debbie Faison Cook had some questions from earlier. I'll get to those in a minute, but these are having to do with this one. So I'll do these first. And then when we're finished with this witness, I'll get to those other questions. Brittany Chanel says, what is the attorney trying to do here? We've got Aaron Morgan asking, why is the attorney so aggressive towards this witness? So basically, the reason why she's being so aggressive here is because, well, number one, that's kind of her style, right? She's a very aggressive attorney. I think one of the prosecutors has otherwise called her like a dragon lady. She has a little bit of this reputation, it seems like. I think that basically what she's trying to do is, well, number one, she's got to put pressure on this witness, right? Even though this witness definitely comes across as a very like kind, intelligent, knowledgeable, and honest witness. She's got to put pressure on her, right? To say like, look, you don't really remember who the person looked like who bought these, right? You don't remember if he came in by himself or with someone else. You don't remember it. She didn't actually say it, but she kind of indicated, like, for all this person knows, it could have actually been Donovan Goudreau who came in to buy these shotguns. It may not have actually been Lyle or Erik Menendez, or both of them, or what have you. So there's that sort of piece there is to say, like, if those details are not exactly fitting in, right? Like if she doesn't remember what this person looked like or what these people looked like, how much was she actually paying attention? How much can we actually trust that she was fully like following along with the process that she's supposed to be taking in selling these guns? Now, I think that it doesn't exactly do very much for the defense here because this witness is just really good. Like she, even when she explains, like, yeah, I don't remember what this person looked like exactly because, essentially she's saying like, this was so routine for me that I it was like any other sale. But she says, like, I remember it because of the processes, right? Like I do these every single time I sell a gun through my job. Is I do, I go through this whole process that I laid out here. And so I know that I always do that. And so that's what I did in this instance. And, you can see it through the documents, et cetera, et cetera. So, and her body language, her demeanor, everything sort of comes across here as very, very honest and straightforward. Like I honestly believe her. I believe that she is competent in her job. I believe that she, did the things that she indicates through these forms and whatnot. And so, yeah, so basically, I mean, that's really like the best thing that Leslie really can do, in this cross-examination is basically try to, take down some credibility by going after how much this witness does not remember the individual's like appearances during that time, or really any of these other details about time of day of this transaction, et cetera, et cetera. But she's very forthright about it, right? The witness is. She's Amanda Adams. She says, hey, yeah, I don't remember what they looked like. I don't, honestly. And so that really helps to sort of keep her credibility intact in the face of this kind of pressure. So yeah. Okay. Let's continue on. Now we're going to redirect.
Adam Geyer. You indicated that it wasn't until March 14th, 1990, almost 7 months after you had made the sale, that the police were able to locate those documents that you've testified to today, correct?
Yes.
Objection that calls for speculation as to what the police were able to do.
Objection sustained.
Yeah.
The answer is stricken.
Yeah.
As far as you know, the day that you saw Detective Zoller on March 14th, 1990, was that the first time that those documents had been shown to the police?
Objection on calls for speculation.
Yeah. It's
Sustained.
still the same thing. He's trying to what if any his way out of this.
Did you give those documents to the Beverly Hills detectives on March 14th, 1990?
I did not personally. I believe my head manager, Reggie Clevitt, dealt with them as far as giving them the paperwork.
Right, I'm going to
But-
object to that and let's just try to based on personal observation.
All right, the objection sustained. The answer is stricken. You can
Okay,
pursue
thank you,
it
Your Honor.
further.
This Reggie Clevitt, He's the manager of Big Five?
Yes, he's
At
the
that time?
manager at that time and now.
On March 14th, 1990, did you see those documents in your store?
Yes.
Now, you said in cross-examination that on May 27th, 1993, a defense investigator by the name of Cindy Utterly came to see you,
Yes.
and you gave her certain information,
Yes.
certain things you remembered.
Yes.
Did you?
I'm going to object and describe there's no foundation.
Objection overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah.
You recall this defense investigator, Cindy Utterly, coming to see you?
Yes, she came to see me in my home.
Was this in San Diego?
Yes.
Did you give her certain information?
We just
By the way, Leslie does not want this to come
discussed
out.
the case for about 30 minutes.
You indicated that you recalled at that time, and you told the defense investigator that you recalled that it was one man who knew what he wanted that came in and bought the shotguns that day?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay, no foundation.
Overruled.
I told Cindy Erdelade that I did not see the customer at point of entry into the store. I did not know whether there was another person with them who might have been shopping around. I only recall, and this is vaguely, that there was only one person at the counter. That's what I told Cindy Erdelade.
Did you tell Cindy also that the person appeared to know what he wanted
Yes.
and said he wanted the two Mossberg shotguns?
Yes.
And then thereafter,
Uh-oh.
did you then call Detective Zoller at the Beverly Hills Police Department?
I had talked to him some point after, but I don't believe I directly called him for that purpose.
However, did you give him that same information that you had given to the defense investigator?
I had mentioned it to him, and he told me that I hadn't told him that before.
Now, do you recall testifying before the grand jury in August of 1992?
Yes.
Do you recall making this statement? I had the driver's license in my possession when I filled out the form. Question. Now, if someone were to present you with a driver's license and had a change of address, would they advise you of that orally? And your answer, I ask every time if the information on the driver's license is correct. Question. If the person says no, then you would fill out the new address, and you answered correct. Do you
Yes.
remember testifying to that?
Yes, I do.
Finally, that there has been some cross-examination about dove loads, the ammunition. Did
Yes.
the person buying these two Mossberg shotguns tell you that he was going to go dove hunting?
Not that I recall, but I don't remember much of a conversation at all with the person, or even having one other than filling out the paperwork.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Any further cross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. You may step down. You're excused.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let me see counsel at the sidebar, please. All right, what we've been doing, ladies and gentlemen, is discussing the schedule here and trying to
Okay.
decide.
So that's going to be like another 20 minutes, and then we'll get to the next witness instead. Let's skip ahead, shall we? Okay. We are going to go back to Glenn Stevens. But before we do that, we've got a couple questions here. Debbie Faison Cook says, which would be an easier win? A client pleading not guilty or a client claiming justifiable homicide? I mean, it really just depends on the circumstances, right? Like, also, hang on. Let me backtrack here. So you would be pleading not guilty either way. It's the basis of your non-guilt, right? If it's a justifiable homicide, meaning that you claim self-defense, for example, you're still saying that you're not guilty. So you're pleading not guilty, but you're saying that you have a justified reason for killing this person. Then there's a situation where you say, it's not me. I didn't do this. I didn't do any of this stuff. That's a different kind of defense, but still pleading not guilty, right? In either situation, you're saying I shouldn't go to prison, which is what you're doing. So it depends on the circumstances, right? Because if you're, for example, Courtney Clenny, the OnlyFans murder case, which we've been covering on this channel. You're the one that is in the apartment with your boyfriend, and you call 911 and say, my boyfriend's just been stabbed, and you are the only one there with him. And there's no chance of being able to say that anyone else came into your apartment because there are so many cameras everywhere that would show somebody coming and going. Like it would be insanely difficult to say it wasn't me, the Shaggy defense. So that basically was like her only kind of defense in this kind of situation. I mean, not her only defense, but her most likely defense is to say, it was DV, it was self-defense, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, but other circumstances would be different. It's really fact specific. And then also says, I'm sorry, I forgot. So Debbie Faison Cook also says, I'm sorry, I forgot. Why couldn't they have only one jury? How can they be tried separately? And could one have been found innocent and one guilty? Well, yeah, these are technically two different trials happening literally at the same time, overlapping with one another. One could have been found innocent, one could have been found guilty. And the reason so they could be tried together. That's what happened after this one. So sorry, spoiler alert to anybody that doesn't already know. This case does end with a mistrial. I apologize for anybody that doesn't want that information ahead of time. But so that's what they ended up doing in the part 2 of this whole saga was they were tried with one jury. And so the reason why they wanted to do this separately was, I mean, the defense really wanted it, right? Because anything to muddy the water is generally going to be good for the defense. So yeah, that basically gets that. All right. Let's continue on, shall we? So I think this is a good
Glenn
spot.
Stevens to the stand.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you may give in the cause not taken before this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please take the stand and state your name.
Glenn Stevens,
Spell your last name.
Stevens.
All right, you may conduct your direct examination.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, did you recently graduate from Princeton University?
Yes, I did.
And in what year did you start at the university, please?
In 1988.
And so was your freshman semester in the fall of 1988?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you graduate from high school in June of 88?
Yes, that's correct.
And in the spring of 1989, did you meet Lyle Menendez?
Yes.
You see him in here in court?
Yes, I do.
What's he presently wearing?
Striped white shirt.
Referring to the defendant at counsel table.
Thank you. Mr. Stevens, at some point, did you consider yourself to be Lyle Menendez's best friend?
Well, yeah, I considered him to be my best friend. I'm not sure that the feeling was mutual.
Okay, but he was your best friend.
Yes.
And about what month was it in 1989 that you recall first meeting him?
And remember, this is not the same as
It was
Craig,
February,
what's
I
his
believe, when he
name,
returned to campus.
who was the high school friend.
And when did the spring semester start that year?
It's usually the first week in February.
And when does the fall semester normally end? Before Christmas?
No, we have exams after Christmas.
All right, and that's continuing.
No, the
through
slimy guy
4
was
years that you were
Craig,
there?
Yes.
the friend from high
When you
school.
first met Lyle Menendez, where were you living?
I was living on campus in my dorm room.
Was it a specific hall that you lived in?
Yeah, I believe it was 1937 Hall.
And do you remember what hall Mr. Menendez was living in?
Yes, in Gauss Hall.
No, this is the real Princeton
At
student.
the time that you first met him, did you also meet a man named Donovan Goudreau?
Yes, soon thereafter.
Were you also friends with Mr. Goudreau?
Yes.
That's right. Thank you.
And,
Craig
during the period of
Signorelli.
times
That was
you were-
Eric's
at
friend.
the time that you were friends with Lyle Menendez, did you spend a lot of time with him together?
Yes.
Now, the spring semester of 1989 ended about when?
It's usually the last week in May or the first week in June.
And during that summer, did you see Lyle Menendez?
No, I did not.
Where did you spend the summer of 1989?
At my house in Freehold, New Jersey with
Was
my
the
parents.
summer of
Did you learn
89?
sometime after August the
Sorry.
20th of 1989 that Lyle Menendez's parents had been killed?
Yes, I did.
Do you remember how it was you were notified of this?
Yes, I had a friend whose mother had worked for Mr. Menendez, actually had worked at RCA in New York City, and she had heard at work the next day that the parents had been killed, and her son called me to tell me.
Did you see Mr. Menendez at the end of the spring semester? Were you still friends with him at the end of the spring
Yes.
semester? During the summer, did you have any contact with him at all?
Yes, he called my house a few times, on a few occasions.
Then the next contact you would have had was to learn of the deaths of the parents. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, prior to learning of the deaths of the parents, had you ever met either one of them?
No.
Did you ever go to California and visit Lyle Menendez at home in California after you made his acquaintance in February of 1989?
Not while the parents were living.
After you found out that they were deceased, what's the next time that you saw or heard from Lyle Menendez?
At the funeral service in Princeton.
Okay, could you tell me what that was? And it was a funeral or a memorial?
It was a memorial service. There was a memorial service, a wake, and then the burial.
Right. Which portion did you go to?
All three.
And where was the memorial service?
The memorial service was in the Princeton University Chapel.
And was the wake outside of the university?
Yes, it was at a
I didn't realize it all
home
happened in Princeton.
right there in town.
And then you also attended the burial.
Yes,
as
that's
opposed
correct.
to LA.
And at the memorial service, did you see Lyle Menendez?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you have any conversation with him?
Not at the memorial service. I did at the wake at the funeral home.
Did you travel by?
Also, this is another difference between him and Craig Signorelli, who said that he didn't go to the memorial service. But I was a little bit more judgmental about that before because I was under the impression that the memorial service happened in California. Craig Signorelli was going to school at UC Santa Barbara. But I guess, I mean, I know that they were relatively new to Los Angeles. Like they had lived, well, I guess not that new. I don't know. They had lived in Los Angeles. It seemed like maybe 3 to 5 years or something like that. That was the impression that I had. And they did have services in New Jersey and California. Okay, then I'm back to getting judgmental about Craig Signorelli. I'm sorry. If that's the case, I'm back to being a little bit more judgmental about him. But here's someone who had never met the parents, and he's like, yeah, I went to all of the things. So he, once again, in comparison, especially to Craig Signorelli, he already looks much more like, I don't know. He doesn't have the same sort of slickness about him. And he seems like he is and he seems like he's like normal, upfront, honest so far. But of course, he hasn't faced cross-examination yet. But we all kind of felt that way about Craig Signorelli before cross-examination, if I'm being honest, right? I mean, at least I did. I don't know. You can speak for yourself, I guess. But Cheryl, we're all kinds of judgmental about that guy. Yeah, a little bit. That's just how, that's kind of, how that felt. Carol says Signorelli deserves judgment. Outside of his testimony, I don't know anything about him, but I just, Oh, Shames Donahue says Signorelli was part of Eric's burglary ring, but avoided being charged because I thought he was an informant. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. Carol says this guy became a partner in an asset management company. Oh, that's interesting. Doesn't surprise me. Princeton grad. So, getting a really good job out of college doesn't surprise me, especially in the 80s, right? Late 80s or early 90s. Okay.
By yourself from the memorial service to the wake?
Well,
did you travel with Mr. Menendez?
From the memorial service to the wake? No, I don't recall so.
All right. Why did you go to the memorial service?
Well, he was a friend of mine, and he was coming into town I figured I should be there.
He definitely seems more like a friend. Had you spoken to him on the
phone between the time that you learned of his parents' deaths and the time of the memorial service?
No, I called and tried to speak to him, but Mr. Menendez's secretary was taking all of their calls, the boys' calls.
Do you remember what day of the week it was that you went to the memorial service?
No.
Had school started by then?
I don't believe so.
And generally, the fall semester at Princeton University, when does it start for people who are not freshmen?
The second week of September, I believe. It's usually the week after Labor Day.
Did you have any conversation with Mr. Lyle Menendez at the wake?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did he say something to you about how he felt about what had happened?
Yes, we spoke for a little while. I had asked him, how he was doing, how he was getting along, and he had a response that I remember that stuck out of my mind.
Okay, what did he tell you?
He said, "Well, I've been waiting so long to be in this position that I'm well prepared for it."
Now, when he said well prepared for the position, did you understand what position he was referring to?
Well, I took it to mean being the man of the family now, being in charge.
Did you offer him consolation when you first spoke to him?
Yeah, I believe so.
The normal things you say to people who've just lost.
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice that he was wearing any kind of watch at this time?
Yes, I noticed that he was wearing a Rolex.
Had you ever seen him wearing a Rolex prior to, when you knew him in the spring of 1989?
No.
Did he say anything to you about the Rolex the first time that you noticed it on him?
Oh, I commented on it, and he told me that it was his father's, and that he was wearing it.
And
Technically,
when he
kind
made
of
this
true.
comment to you, was
'Cause
that
he
at
bought
the
it with
wake?
his funds.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did you later learn from Lyle Menendez that in fact he had purchased the Rolex?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know about when it was after the wake that you learned that?
No, I can't recall.
Was it a matter of weeks, months?
It was probably soon thereafter, but I can't say definitively.
After the memorial service, the wake and the burial, did you begin to spend time with Lyle Menendez again?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, during the spring of 1989, how much time during a normal day would you say that you spent with Lyle Menendez?
A few hours.
Now, could you give us a brief description of the class schedule that the students have at Princeton? Do you go to class from 8 to 5, or how does
No,
that
on the average, you have about 3 50-minute classes every day, and the rest of the day you pretty much have to yourself for studying or sports or whatnot.
Okay, so approximately 3 hours of class per day, and then the rest of the day is left to your own devices.
Yes, that's correct.
What was the bond that you had with Lyle Menendez when you first met him in the spring of 1989?
Well, it was immediately obvious that both of us were not very happy at Princeton University, and we sort of had a bonding experience in that we felt that the university was a little bit too structured and that we didn't get along with most of the Princeton type people.
And when you renewed your friendship with him after the death of his parents, were you as close to him then as you had been in the spring?
I would say so.
And did you spend a lot of time with him?
Yes.
Now, if in fact the university didn't start until the second week of September, between the time of the memorial service and the start of school, did you spend a lot of time with Lyle Menendez?
Yes.
Do you remember that he was being guarded by bodyguards at a certain period of time?
Yes.
And when and how did you first become aware that he was being guarded?
I imagine, if I recall correctly, I remember being at the Baralt's house one day, Aunt Terry's house, and sitting there, and some bodyguards came into the house ahead of Lyle, checked out the house, and then Lyle walked in. And I think that's the first time that I actually saw them.
Okay, now, when you talk about Aunt Terry, could you tell us who she is, please?
Terry Baralt is Lyle's aunt. It's Jose's sister, I believe.
And prior to, after the memorial service, was that the first time you'd ever known her, or did you know her in the spring of 1989?
I knew her in the spring of 1989. Right.
And how was it that you knew her?
We went over to the house very often and sat with her and spoke with her, ate there on occasion.
Did she act like someone's typical aunt?
Yes.
Okay. And how many times a week or a month would you say you saw her in the spring of 1989?
That would be difficult to say. I don't know. We probably went there maybe once a week, once every other week. It was sporadic.
When you say we went there, aside from yourself and Lyle Menendez, did anyone else ever go over to her house?
Yes, often Hayden Rogers would also go. Remember an occasion here or there where Greg Guest might have went as well.
And Greg Guest and Hayden Rogers were also students at Princeton University in the
Yes.
spring of 1989?
Yes.
Now, referring back now to the fall after the memorial service, I believe you indicated the first time you noticed the bodyguards was at Aunt Terry's house. Is that correct?
I believe so.
Did Lyle ever say anything to you about why he wanted bodyguards?
Well, there was the whole idea of that maybe the mafia had been responsible for this murder, and that I just understood that he was fearing for his own person.
At some point after you became aware that he was being guarded by bodyguards, were you aware of the fact that he went to Los Angeles for a day?
Yes.
Okay, did you know that before or after the fact of the trip?
I can't recall. I know that I knew it after. I'm not sure if I knew beforehand that he was going out to LA.
Were you spending time with him before the fact of the trip?
Yes.
After the trip, did he tell you why he'd gone to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Okay, what did he say?
He told me that his uncle Carlos had found a file in the computer that had 3 headings on it. One of them said Menendez, one of them said list, I believe, and one of them said will. And that he went out there to try and open the files and read what was in them.
Now, when he told you the term will, did you understand that to be the name of a document or somebody's name, like Will being short for William?
The name of the document, the
Okay,
family will.
Like a last will and
Yes.
testament. Okay, did he tell you why he wanted to access the computer?
He wanted to read what was in the will because he knew that his father was drafting a new will, and he wanted to see if he could read what was in there.
Did he tell you the results of his search?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
They opened the files and found nothing legible inside. They couldn't be opened. They couldn't be accessed for some reason. And he told the computer expert that he had hired just to erase the contents.
Did he tell you why he wanted the contents erased?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said, well, my father wasn't very happy with me at the time. And since the will that was found gave me and my brother everything, I had nothing to lose by erasing this one. I'm not sure if I would have been in it.
Were you aware of whether or not Lyle Menendez had any computer skills when you were friends with him during this period of time?
I'm sure he had basic word processing skills at Princeton, I believe.
I'm going to object unless there's a showing.
Speculation.
Objection sustained, the answer is stricken.
Yeah, that's
Did you
definitely
ever see
speculative.
him work an IBM computer?
Macintosh, I believe.
But
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now,
Ad
when
placement.
Lyle Menendez told you about erasing the will, did he say anything about the person who had done the erasure?
Yes.
What did he say?
He said that he had found a little Jewish guy, a computer expert, who we didn't think anybody would be able to find.
During the period of time that you spent with Lyle
It's a weird
Menendez,
statement to make.
before the start of school and even after the start of school, did you and he ever go shopping together?
Yes.
Okay. Could you tell us what you went shopping for?
Clothes, lots of things. Are you speaking about in the spring of 1989?
No, I'm sorry. If I said that, I misspoke. After the death of the parents.
We went shopping very often for a lot of things.
Well, since you brought it up before that time, before the parents had died, had you ever gone shopping with him while you were both together in the spring of '89 before his parents were deceased?
Not that I recall.
Right. Did he ever buy you things or buy dinner or anything in the spring of 1989 before his parents were deceased?
Not that I recall.
After the memorial service, you went shopping?
Yes, very often.
Okay. What did you shop for?
A Porsche, real estate, 2 condominiums and a patio home, clothes, things of that nature.
Now, in the spring of 1989, I keep jumping back and forth, and if you're unclear, just correct me. Were you aware of whether or not Lyle Menendez owned an automobile before his parents' death?
Yes.
What kind of automobile did he own?
I believe he had an Alfa Romeo at home. I'm not sure it was on campus.
Okay, did he indicate to you that he had an Alfa Romeo at home?
Yes.
Did he ever indicate whether or not he was pleased with having an Alfa Romeo versus another kind of car?
Well, he sometimes referred to it as and I apologize, a piece of shit, and that he had expressed an interest in Porsches.
And if this was before the death of his parents?
Yes.
After the death of his parents, you went and drove?
Yes, I went with him on test drive of the Porsche.
Did
Yes.
you ever look for any other car aside from Porsches?
Not that I recall.
During this period of time that you were spending time with him, did he always wear the Rolex watch?
Well, he had 2 of them.
Oh, okay. What was the other one?
He had a gold Rolex President's watch, and he also had a platinum Submariner diving watch.
All right. So whenever you were with him, did he have one of the 2 watches on?
Yes.
Did you ever wear one of the watches?
Well, that was later on, yes. When he was wearing one, he had a Submariner and lost it and went and replaced it, purchased another one. And so he said at that time, well, when I'm wearing one of them, you wear the other one. That way I know where it is. I won't lose it.
Okay. Do you know during what period of time it was that he lost the Submariner?
He lost it in the fall of my sophomore year around Princeton somewhere. In somebody's room it was left.
Jesus.
And went back and it was gone.
Now, the fall of your
probably
sophomore
thousands
year
of
was the
dollars
fall
right
of
there.
1989, correct?
Correct.
And that was after his parents' death.
Yes.
So after the replacement of the Submariner, you sometimes would wear one of the watches that he wasn't wearing?
Correct.
Did you return to Princeton in the fall of 1989 and become a student again?
Yes.
And did you stay a student there and finish that semester at Princeton University?
Yes, that's correct.
And sometime after the completion of your first semester of your sophomore year, did Lyle Menendez hire you?
Yes, it was right around the beginning of my spring semester.
Had you already started your spring semester?
Yes, that's correct.
And when he hired you, what did he hire you to do?
It wasn't exactly specific at the time. Part of it was going to be dealing with Chuck Spring Street Cafe, or Mr. Buffalo's, as it was being renamed. Part of it was just looking over real estate deals, just as a personal advisor on some investment
What was your major at the time?
politics.
Okay. Did you have any investment background?
Not anything formal. I had an interest in it and did some reading.
Now, I believe you made some reference to Chuck Spring Street Cafe. Could you tell us what that was, please?
It was a local eatery in the Princeton area that specialized in buffalo wings.
Before, in the spring of 1989, before the death of the parents, had you ever been there with Lyle Menendez?
I don't recall.
Okay. After the death of the parents, did you ever go there with Lyle Menendez?
Yes.
And at some point, did he actually purchase the restaurant?
Yes.
Do you remember about what month it was in the fall of 1989 that he first expressed an interest in purchasing the restaurant?
I can't recall the month.
Was it in the fall of 1989, though?
Yes, I believe so.
Your Honor, I have here a document. I'd like to mark it as People's Next in Order, which is 54, please. And counsel, will you stipulate that this is a true and correct business record reflecting the sale of the Spring Street Cafe to Lyle Menendez?
Yeah, this definitely sounds like a couple young men who lived a very repressed life that as soon as the source of
All right,
that
at this point, the
repression
document
was lifted,
is marked Exhibit 54.
like a volcano
That's correct. Thank you,
exploding.
Your Honor. May I approach, please?
Yes.
Well, before I approach, Mr. Stevens, were you present during any of the negotiations for the purchase of the restaurant?
Yes.
And which portions?
Some of the preliminary negotiations and also for the actual purchase.
And that would have been when the money was presented?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you remember what the purchase price was?
I believe it was $550,000.
And do you remember what the down payment was to be?
I believe $300,000.
Were you personally present when $300,000 was tendered to the owner of Chuck Spring Street?
Yes, in the form of a cashier's check or something like that, I believe.
May I approach, please?
Yes.
I'm going to show you the last page of this document, People's, Exhibit 54, and ask you if this looks familiar to you. It appears to be a copy of a check drawn in the United Jersey Bank as a cashier's check in the amount of $300,000.
Yes.
Okay, does that appear to be similar to what you saw?
Yes.
You didn't memorize the number of the
No.
check? Okay. Now, your employment then was to be some sort of advisor and also to work at this restaurant, is that correct?
Yes.
And did you arrive at a figure for your services?
Well, there was a basic weekly figure that was arrived at, yes. that's
And how
correct.
much was that?
It was approximately $600 a week.
And were you up to
Whoa.
work at the restaurant as well as do the other things you
In those
described?
days?
Yes.
Did you in fact work at that restaurant for a period of time?
Yes.
From what period until what period?
From its purchase until probably July, the July after the arrests in 1990, I guess.
So for about 3 or 4 months after the arrest, you were still working there?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm about to go into some other things. I think this would be a good time to break.
All right. All right, we'll take a recess then, ladies and gentlemen. It's 4:30 and we'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't form any opinions about it. Don't look at any of the news coverage or
Yeah.
listen to any of the news coverage. And we'll resume tomorrow at 9 o'clock. That's it for today.
Yeah. the overpayment for this purchase.
Jurors leave. Everybody be seated until the jurors leave, please.
Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next episode, which is continuation of Glenn Stevens. But that's yeah. This is also what happens. This is another result of when somebody just all of a sudden has a bunch of money and they don't know how to manage it because they've never been given proper skills for financial management. They don't. He doesn't know how to invest ostensibly, right? I mean, this is someone who we haven't heard testimony on this yet at this point, but this is what I've heard about Erik and Lyle Menendez is that, Lyle getting into Princeton, his dad made a massive donation to Princeton so that he could get into Princeton. Would he have gotten in on his own merit? I don't know. That's an interesting question because there was a lot to suggest that his mother was doing his homework for him, and the same thing for Erik. So these guys were not given proper life skills to really be able to handle the real world. Arguably, that's the impression that I have. So yeah, I mean, thinking, yeah, I'm gonna buy all these things and think that I'm investing. These are going to be great investments. I'll just toss money at these people and it'll be fine. It'll be totally fair. When you can totally get hosed by someone very easily. And if you just have a bunch of money and you don't have any sense as to how to grow that money, that's something that can easily happen. Okay, so we've got some more questions here. One more question here that I noticed. Malachi Washington says, what would happen if you're found incompetent to stand trial? The issue is how long would you be well, so first off, trial would be at least postponed, right? I don't actually know. I've never litigated a case like this before, but because I actually haven't done criminal law myself. But I know that you cannot stand trial if you are determined to be incompetent to stand trial. There's a question as to whether you can become incompetent or become competent later on. Like in the Vallow Daybell case, I think Lori Vallow, right? That's her name. I think that she was for a period of time. Oh, Malachi. Did I say Malachi? I think I did, didn't I? Malachi. Sorry. Anyway, so Lori Vallow, or is it Lori Daybell? I'm so sorry. What Lori, the female in that case, or in those cases, those companion cases, was for a period of time determined to be incompetent, and as a result, they were the trials were postponed. But I think my impression is, I haven't really looked at that case. I see it falls on my radar every once in a while, but I'm pretty sure they determined that she is now again competent so that they can proceed with trial. So it depends on the reasons for competency. Is it a permanent thing? Is it not? If it's permanent, then there are probably other procedures that they go through. But definitely not a full trial. Definitely wouldn't be going to jail. Yeah, all kinds of stuff. Okay. Anyhow, let's continue on here now with more Glenn Stevens testimony. All right.
The court wants to tell us when the court wants to discuss it.
No, I want to proceed with the jury, and we've been waiting for almost 30 minutes for the juror to arrive because, or she's indicated that she was late because of traffic, and now we're ready, and I certainly don't want to delay that in any way.
Two quick issues then. On the tape, which I have now listened to, Mr. Goodrow indicates that he had some conversation with Mr. Stevens about molestation, and I believe the defense wants to ask Mr. Stevens about that. Our position on that would be that if that is offered as either fresh complaint or prior consistent statement, that it is not an issue until the defendant testifies. The other issue is that I believe the defense wants to ask.
Oh, you know what? And also, we can skip through.
Connections and perhaps.
Mr. Goodrow start, so it's
we can skip
incumbent
through the
on all
arguments
of you
here
to get here early and, if necessary, doubly early so that we don't have to wait. There's always things that delay the proceedings when the lawyers have matters they want me to discuss with them, and I know it's frustrating for you that we have you here on time and then you come in and you have to wait. I apologize for those occurrences when they happen, and I can assure you they'll happen in the future. But regardless of that, it's still important that we have you all here at the same time I tell you to be here, so that when we are ready, we can start up without any further delay. With so many people involved, we have 18 of you, and when we have the other jury in the courtroom at the same time, 36 people that have to all be here on time, in addition to all the court staff and the people involved in the case, the lawyers and everyone else. So it's very important we get everybody here at the same time. All right, then we'll proceed with the testimony of Mr. Stevens before the Lyle Menendez jury only. And would you state your name again for the record?
Glenn Stevens.
All right, Mr. Stevens, I'll remind you that you're still under oath. All right, you may proceed.
Mr. Stevens, your freshman year at Princeton, which ended in the spring of 1989, do you remember approximately how much the tuition, room, and board was?
Somewhere around $22,000 probably.
Now, in the spring of 1989, before the deaths of the parents, you spent, I think you testified, a lot of time with Lyle Menendez. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did he have lots of spending money in terms of cash at that time?
Before the deaths of the parents, no.
Right. And when you went places or to eat or things like that, did it appear to you that he had a lot of money?
Well, I was aware of his
Something's off with his mic.
his parents and whatnot, but he never had physically had much cash on himself.
Oh, good. They fixed it right when I said that.
Now, in
It does look like Peyton
early
Manning.
May of
Thank
1989,
you.
before the deaths, Donovan Goodrow was living with Lyle inside of his room, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, did you have any discussions with Lyle Menendez about ejecting Mr. Goodrow from the accommodations at Princeton?
Yes.
And what was the discussion about? And did you advise Lyle Menendez of certain things?
Well, yes, myself, Greg Guest, and Hayden Rogers all went to Lyle to make him aware that we had discovered some things that Donovan had been lying about.
And did you, the three of you, have this discussion in each other's presence with Lyle Menendez?
Yes, I believe so.
Do you recall yourself, though, giving information to Lyle Menendez about Donovan Goodrow?
Yes.
And how long before Mr. Goodrow actually was ejected was it that you gave Lyle Menendez the information?
Well, period of just a few days. And once I told Lyle about it, we proceeded to eject Donovan from the room.
And what did you tell Lyle Menendez?
Well, I had told Lyle Menendez that there were a lot of things that Donovan had been telling us that were just blatant lies.
Right. And did you urge Lyle Menendez to do something in regard to these lies?
I said, well, not only is Donovan telling us blatant lies, but there was an incident where Lyle had some money missing from the room. So I immediately assumed that possibly he was the one that was responsible for the money missing. And I said, obviously you can't trust this guy.
What did Lyle tell you in response to what you told him?
To be honest, he didn't seem happy about it. I think he felt a special bond with Donovan, and he was reluctant to expel Donovan from the room.
Did you have more than one conversation with Lyle Menendez about your suspicions?
Yes, it was discussed on a few occasions. And also, I believe it was discussed in front of Terry Baralt, the aunt.
All right. So this would have been at what period of time before Donovan was actually asked to leave?
Like I said, the few days before.
When Donovan did finally leave, did you ever see his wallet?
Yes.
Could you tell us about that, please?
Yes, Donovan, we packed up his truck and Donovan went out the window and left. And soon thereafter, that day, Lyle held up a leather wallet, told me that it was Donovan's and that he had kept it.
Okay. Did he say what he was going to do with it?
Well, we sat down on the bed and went through the wallet to see what was in it. And there was, I remember distinctly, a Wells Fargo card and Donovan's driver's license. And he was, I don't know if he told me this or if I was just under the impression, but
I'm going to object then, Your Honor.
Okay.
He can't testify his impression.
Yeah. Okay. You understand what the objection is?
Yes.
All right. Did Lyle tell you that he'd stolen the wallet?
he told me that he had kept it.
Okay. Did he ever tell you he was going to return it to Donovan?
No.
Did he tell you he was going to do anything with any of the articles inside of the wallet?
He had mentioned about the Wells Fargo card, that Donovan had a big account.
And what did he say he was
in
going to do?
He wanted to try and retrieve the money that was stolen from him.
Do you know about how much money was involved in this theft?
I know it was a small amount, somewhere around $100, $150, something like that.
Did he say anything else to you about any handwriting he was going to do?
Well,
Object.
Yeah, it's pretty leading. Whisper, whisper, whisper.
Yeah. Okay. All right. After you saw the wallet in his possession, did you ever see it again after that day?
No, I don't believe so. I can't recall ever seeing it again.
Did you ever have possession of the wallet?
No.
Okay.
It never left the room as far as I know.
When he held up the wallet to you, what was his demeanor like?
He was laughing about it.
Was he crying when Donovan left?
I do remember that he seemed reluctant to ask Donovan to leave. He was sort of upset that it had come to this eventuality, but he accepted it.
Now, how long was it after that he held up the wallet and was laughing? And in other words, after Donovan left and Lyle Menendez was upset, how much after that did he hold it up and laugh about the wallet?
Within an hour.
Now, the summer of 1989, the summer after your freshman year, I believe you testified that you had telephone contact with Lyle Menendez, but that was all. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. After the deaths of his parents, I believe you indicated you went shopping for automobiles, correct?
Correct.
And were you actually with Lyle Menendez when he completed the purchase of a Porsche?
I believe so.
Your Honor, I have here some documents. I'd like to mark them as Exhibit 55, which I believe is next in order. The defense has a copy. Did you ever see the preparation of any of the documents used to purchase the Porsche?
We went there over a period of time on several occasions to fill out some of the paperwork, to test drive the car over and over again. And there were several times that paperwork was done in my presence.
Right. Your Honor, counsel, will you stipulate that Exhibit 55 is an accurate business record of the transaction, which it purports to depict?
So stipulated.
Okay, thank you. May I approach, please?
Yes.
You said you test drove the car. Do you know about how many times?
I remember one time distinctly where I was in the car when it was test driven, and I know of other times when Lyle went and test drove the car when I wasn't there.
All right. So you can testify to at least one test drive that you participated in.
Yes.
And these records appear to be from a place called John Wood. It looks like a Porsche Audi dealership on Route 1 in North Princeton. Is that the dealership at which the car was purchased?
Correct.
Right. And do you remember what kind of Porsche it was? Was it new or used?
It was a demo model, I believe. It was used, but it was still a late model.
Okay. And was there any kind of customization that was done to it?
It was a limited edition Porsche. It was a 911 Carrera Cabriolet limited edition. I don't know about customization or anything like
Did it
that.
have one of those fins in back?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember about how much this
All of
automobile
this
cost?
is just to show
Between $60,000
these
and
guys are
$70,000.
unrelatable. Jesus, it's a lot of money.
I believe you also mentioned
They're
yesterday that you
unrelatable,
had
super wealthy. They did all of
gone
this
to
for
Lyle Menendez
money.
for real estate.
Killed
gone
their
shopping for real
parents for
estate.
their
Correct.
fortune.
Your Honor, I have here two more exhibits. I'd like to mark them as 56 and 57. 56 will be the one for $265 and $265,000. And the other one is for $128,000. Counsel, will you stipulate that exhibits 56 and 57 are accurate business records which depict the transaction contained therein, and that the escrows contained in 56 and 57 did not close?
So stipulated.
All right. Now, do you remember the name of the location where these homes were contained? The name of the development?
It was next to the Market Fair Mall. I can't remember right now offhand the name of the development.
Okay, if I showed you the documents, do you think perhaps that would refresh your memory?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm showing the witness exhibits 56 and 57.
Canal Point, right.
All right. And were you with him at any time when he actually gave money to the people there at this development?
I don't recall so.
Now, was this one of those places where they were building them and selling them as they went along, or were they already built, or how did that work?
I don't know if the development was finished or not. I don't. The one patio home that Lyle was looking at hadn't been completed on the inside, I think.
Who was going to live in this patio home?
Lyle had told me he planned to live there.
Okay, did he tell you why he had two of them and why he was buying two?
I didn't really. There were two condominiums and one patio home. I don't remember a second patio home. I think it was trying to choose between two of them. I don't know that he was going to purchase two of them.
Now, I believe you testified yesterday that in the spring of 1990, after the deaths, that you dropped out of Princeton for a year or for a period of time. Is that correct?
I took a year's leave of absence, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, dropped out is not the right word. Did you notify the university that you would be coming back?
Yes.
All right, and what was your purpose in leaving the university for a year?
Well, Lyle needed help with some of his real estate transactions and the restaurant and things like that. And I also wasn't very happy with the university. I wanted to take a year's leave of absence anyway. So the two things sort of fit together well. He needed help and I needed a year off. So I could take a year off and work for him. I'd have a job. I'd be taken care of.
And ultimately, you did graduate from Princeton University, correct?
Yes, that's correct. This June.
And what was your major?
Politics.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Politics, with no intention of doing such.
Also different from Craig Signorelli.
Did you then,
he's like his foil.
left the university for a year, spend a great deal of time with Lyle Menendez?
Yes.
Sometime around the holidays of 1989, 1990, that Christmas and New Year's, did you come to California?
Yes.
And was that with Lyle Menendez?
I met him out here. I didn't come with him on the plane or anything.
Did you come to visit him then?
Yes.
And that was before you had made the final decision to leave the university for a year?
Yes, that's correct.
Where did you stay when you were out here?
In the Marina Del Rey apartment.
All right. Did you ever go to the Beverly Hills house during that period of time?
It's possible.
Do you have any specific recollection of doing so?
Not at the moment.
Sometime then in late February or early March of 1990, did you again travel to Los Angeles?
Yes.
Okay. And who did you travel with at that time?
Lyle and Hayden Rogers.
Okay, now Hayden Rogers is this other friend that's been described in the testimony, is that correct?
Yes.
And at the time that you and Hayden and Lyle Menendez traveled to California, were you all on the same flight?
Yes.
And at that time, was Hayden still a student at Princeton, or was he also not?
He had been asked to leave for several years.
Several years?
For 2.5 years.
All right. When you came out on the plane, did Lyle Menendez leave for a period of time and make a telephone call?
He made a telephone call on the flight, yes.
Okay, was that done in your presence?
It was one of those credit card phones on the flight, and it wasn't in the seat in front of us, so he had to get up and do it. It was in my sight, but it wasn't in my presence.
So you couldn't hear what he was saying, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, when he came
More
back from the
fun
phone call,
tech
did he
stuff.
say something to you?
Yes, he told me that he had called the restaurant.
Okay, and when he said the restaurant, did you understand what he meant by that?
I understood Chuck Spring Street Cafe.
Now, at the time that he made this phone call, were you already employed there, or were you starting your employment there, or how did that work?
I had already decided to take a year off from Princeton. I had notified the university, and I understood myself to be in Lyle's employment already. I'm not sure if I had physically started in the restaurant, because that decision that I was to work at the restaurant might have been made later.
Right. And when he came back from making the phone call, he indicated that he'd called the restaurant, correct?
Correct.
What else did he say?
He said that the Beverly Hills police had been at the restaurant looking for him.
Right. And how did he appear when he made the statement to you?
Nervous.
All right. Then what happened?
He took a large sum of money out of his pocket. It was approximately $2,000, and split it between Hayden and myself. And he also took out a business card for a gentleman by the name of Gerald Chaliff.
Okay. And did he indicate to you who Mr. Chaliff was?
He said that Mr. Chaliff was his attorney.
What did he do with the money in the business card?
He gave, it wasn't exactly half. He gave about $1,200 of the dollars or $1,400 of the dollars to me and the rest to Hayden. And the business card he gave to me and told me, when we get into California, if anything should happen to me, you call Gerald Chaliff because he knows everything, and tell him what happened if something was to happen.
And he wasn't more specific about what might happen at that time?
Well, he said he discussed that Gerald Chaliff knew everything. And I asked him, what do you mean know everything? And then he didn't elaborate on that until he discussed the tapes of Jerome Oziel.
All right. Now, when he discussed the tapes of Jerome Oziel, was that during the same plane flight or was that at a...
Yes, it was in the same discussion where the business card was taken out.
All right. And what did he tell you about that?
He told me that he had been going to a psychologist, Jerome Oziel, either him or his brother had been going, and that Dr. Oziel had made some tapes of discussions between himself and the doctor.
Did Lyle Menendez tell you where he thought the tapes were located?
Yes, he told me that Dr. Oziel had them in a safe deposit box.
Did he tell you what might happen if that box were revealed?
Yes, he said, if the police get their hands on those tapes, and I quote, he said, I'm fucked.
And that was the end of the discussion, is that correct?
Pretty much.
All right.
Yikes. Yikes. That's
On
one
March
hell of
the
an
8th of
admission.
1990, were you in Beverly Hills, California?
Yes.
And
And
were
this
you present
is-
at the time that Lyle Menendez was arrested?
Yes.
Hang on, let me
Shortly after.
let me pause real quick. That's one hell of an admission right there, by Lyle Menendez to Greg Stevens to say, yeah, these are these tapes. This is what I said on them, and if the police get them, I am screwed. So I mean, like if so the jury is already primed on like what in the world is on these tapes. I want to hear them. Undoubtedly that is what they are thinking, and this is coming from a witness who, as we've said up to this point, has seemed to be very honest, very forthright, very comes from a lot of privilege, obviously, and it's not it's not uncommon at all, actually, that he majored in something like politics and said, I have no intention of going into politics, right? Like, but this is the kind of person that we would expect to find from Princeton in the late 1980s, right? Is this kind of a guy. But despite all of that, he seems like he could relate to a lot of people outside of his own demographic. I don't know. Maybe you feel differently. Let me know. Let me know what you guys think. But to me personally, like I didn't go to an Ivy League school myself. And I feel like I could have a conversation with this person. And just a casual conversation about this case or whatever else, So I feel like he probably is coming across relatively well to this jury before this point. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons why the prosecution wanted to have someone like Craig Signorelli before him, is because he was so slick. Maybe he greased the skids for Glenn Stevens, you know what I mean? I don't know. That's my thought on this. It could be, but okay. And here's a good point right here. Just wait until cross, says Seamus Donahue. Right. All of that can totally change when we see cross-examination, right? He can be put as soon as a witness is put under pressure, the image can totally shift. So let's keep watching and let's see how this goes.
After that, were you asked by someone to retrieve something from Lyle's Porsche?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, do you know how the Porsche came to be in California after its purchase in Princeton? Do you know from your own knowledge, not from what someone told you?
It was shipped, I believe, back to California.
And did someone ask you to go to the Porsche and get something out of the Porsche?
The Porsche was in a audio shop getting a stereo put in, and I was asked to go and get in the back of the Porsche a backgammon box, I believe it was.
And did you, in fact, go and get that backgammon box?
Yes, I did.
And where were you told to take that box?
I was told to take it to Gerald Chaliff.
And did you, in fact, meet Mr. Chaliff?
I went to his office. He wasn't there. We called from a payphone, tried to get in touch with him, and he eventually met us at a gas station that evening where we handed it over to him.
All right, and that was the last you saw of the box, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, when you say it was a backgammon box, what do you mean by that?
It was a box that a backgammon game had come packaged in.
So did it have something on the top that looked like a backgammon board? Or?
Yeah, like chess, backgammon, multiple set or something like that.
And could you describe how big the box was? When you talk about a game, was it like a Monopoly box or different?
It was a little bit smaller. Like this was probably a fold-up backgammon thing or something that was inside. It was about that big, the box.
Indicating about 12 to 14 inches, Your Honor.
Yes.
And you, in fact, did turn it over. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you look inside the box before you turned it over?
Yes, on the ride to Gerald Chaliff's office, I opened it.
And did you go through it?
Mm-hmm.
Is that yes?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you see inside the box?
There was
Just generally, what did you see in the box?
there was a collection of personal letters, family things of the Menendez family.
Did you see any photographs in there?
Yes, I believe so.
All right. And it appeared to be things from the Menendez family?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Thank you.
All right. Cross-examination by Michelle Pfeiffer.
Morning, Mr. Stevens.
Morning.
This box that you referred to,
Mm-hmm.
Who asked you to get the box out of the car?
It was Jamie Pisarcik, I believe.
Now, have you told the police on different occasions that it was Jamie Pisarcik and also that it was Steve Goldberg?
Yes, I misspoke on one occasion. I believe that Jamie Pisarcik told me to get it on the orders of Steve Goldberg.
Do you know for sure, or are you just trying to
No, I don't.
reconstruct? So it could have been Jamie.
I'm trying to reconstruct it. I just remember that I was told to get the box. I remember that I got it. And when you asked me the question before, you jogged my memory, and it was Jamie actually that asked me to get it.
Okay, I asked you because there was a police report in which you'd said that Steve Goldberg was the one. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that not all of these events are crystal clear in your mind?
Certainly, it was 4 years ago. I'm trying the best I can.
Okay. And in some cases, are you just trying to put together things in terms of what makes sense, what's logical, what you think would have happened, rather than specific memory?
Well, I'm trying the best I can to come up with
Deductions,
specific
just
memory.
like with the last witness.
But in some cases, such as the situation about who asked you to get the box, things are a little
At the
fuzzy.
time that I say it, I believe it to be true, so.
Okay, so when you said it was Jamie Pisarcik, you believed it to be true. When you said it was Steve Goldberg, you believed it to be true.
Yes, that's a fair statement.
And whoever it is who asked you to get the box out of the car, were you given any instructions with regard to whether you were to look in the box or not?
Absolutely.
And what were those instructions?
I was told not to look in the box.
And when you violated those instructions and looked in the box, you said you saw that
Isn't
there
that
were
supposed to be
letters.
step 4? Look at
Yes,
the box.
that's correct.
Did you read those letters?
Yes, I did.
Can you tell us what was in those letters?
Objection hearsay.
Your Honor, they've opened up this area.
Well, the contents of the letters have not been gone into by the prosecution. So the objection is sustained if you're offering up for the truth of what was contained in those letters.
I'm asking about his memory, Your Honor, what he remembers about what was in those letters, how detailed his memory is.
Objection is sustained.
How many letters did you read?
My recollection is there was one letter and one, I remember, like a Father's Day card. Something along, it was a greeting card, I should say.
Okay, and did these appear to be very personal family
Yes.
letters?
What was your answer?
Yes.
Mr. Stevens, you indicated that you first met Lyle in spring of 1989.
It was the spring of my freshman year.
Is that 1989?
Yes, yes.
And
I
you
believe so.
graduated in June of 1988 from high school?
Yes,
What high school?
it was the Westminster School in Simsbury, Connecticut.
And when you first met Lyle, did you spend a lot of time with him?
Not in the first couple of weeks. I met him, and then I met him again, and then I met him again, and eventually we began spending a lot of time together.
When did you begin spending a lot of time together?
Probably by March and April of that spring.
And in May of 89 was the end of the school year or early June?
Yeah, the last week of May, first week of June, usually.
Now, you were a member of this group of friends, Hayden, Greg Guest, Donovan, yourself, and Lyle.
Yes,
is that
that's correct.
And is it fair to say that Lyle spent the majority of his time with Donovan?
In the beginning, yes, that's fair to say, but Donovan was also asked to leave the room. And once Donovan was gone, he spent more time with us than previously.
Right. And Donovan was asked to leave in May of '89?
I believe so, early May.
And you have described yourself as one of the primary people who was encouraging Lyle to have Donovan move out. Is that correct?
Yes,
And when you had this discussion with Lyle about having Donovan move out, did you supply information to Lyle to try to convince him to have Donovan move out?
absolutely.
And was Lyle reluctant to have
Absolutely.
Donovan move out?
Yes.
Wait until she finishes before you answer.
And was this because of his close friendship or feeling of loyalty to Donovan? Is that what it appeared to be?
I was under that impression, yes.
And were you aware that Lyle had invited Donovan to come to Beverly Hills for the summer, to spend the summer with him and his family?
No, I don't remember that. Lyle had invited myself for that summer.
And then was that invitation withdrawn?
Yes, over the summer, he called in the telephone conversation.
Were you disappointed by that?
Yes,
Now, how many times
like
have
they're
you
trying to
been
get at
interviewed
jealousy.
by reporters, television reporters, print, newspaper, magazine reporters, radio reporters, reporters of any stripe?
many times.
What's many times? More than 10?
I would be guessing if I could answer that question. I don't know if it was more than 10.
Well, can you tell us whom you've been interviewed by?
Yes, I was interviewed by the LA Times reporters John Johnson and Ron Sobel early on in this.
How many times did you talk to them?
Once, I believe, or twice. Once on the telephone and once in person.
Okay. And who else?
I spoke to Bob Rand
How many times?
many times over the period of this entire case.
What's many times? More than 5? More than 10?
With him, it's more than 5, definitely.
Is that in person and then in addition to
In
that phone
person
calls?
and on the telephone.
And who else did you speak to in terms of reporters?
I did an interview for NBC that I believe Bob Rand was the interviewer in one case, and there was another woman that was an interviewer in another case, and I did an interview for another television station also.
And what was the other television station?
I don't remember whether it was ABC or CBS. It was one of the two networks.
And have you been interviewed by anybody else of the reporter type?
It's difficult to recall right now. There were a lot of them. I don't remember.
Would it be fair to say that you've probably talked to reporters somewhere between 15 and 20 times on this case?
It would probably be fair to say that.
And how many times have you talked to the police on this case?
Also several times.
Several times?
Yeah.
Would you say it's in excess of 20?
I don't know if it's 20 separate occasions, probably with the
Okay.
grand jury indictment and telephone conversations. Yes.
Okay. And have you formed a sort of a friendship with Detective Zoller?
Yes, that would be fair to say.
Okay. And when you're out here, as you were last August for the grand jury or now, do you see him in the evenings sometimes?
Yes, I did at the grand jury indictment. Yes.
Okay. And what type of evening entertainment did you?
We went out for a few drinks and he showed us around LA.
Where did he take you?
Well, I don't know the town well, but like around the Sunset Strip and things like that.
And how long, when you went for
Reximoto,
the
this
drinks,
is
was
getting
this in a
to
restaurant or what
bias.
type of place was it in?
There were a few places.
He's getting a lot of
I
attention.
know what you're getting at.
He's on TV.
Well, why don't you just tell me then?
Yeah, it was.
He's getting
on
shown
one
around
occasion there was a
town.
go-go bar that we went into.
Was this a topless bar?
Oh,
Yes.
Oh, this is the
And how
topless
many
bar.
other bars did you go into with Detective Zoller?
Probably 2 or 3 at most.
And who was with you and Detective Zoller when you went in this topless bar?
The bodyguard, Richard Wenskowski.
Thank you. Have you been requested by the defense to be interviewed by us?
Yes,
Have you refused?
yes,
Always?
yes.
We've made
Until
notice,
yesterday or the day before, whenever.
which was in the presence of the
Yes.
district attorneys and Mr. Zoller for about 20 minutes.
Yes.
Now, in one of those television interviews, do you remember saying that Lyle Menendez was your best friend?
I probably said that.
Okay. And do you remember saying in that television interview that you saw him every day for 6 months before the homicides and every day for 7 months
Your everyday
afterwards?
sheep. Yeah, he did say that.
I may have said that also.
Was that a lie?
I don't think it was a lie. I mean, every day, may have been a bit of an exaggeration, but I didn't deliberately lie.
When did school end in 1989?
Like I said, the first week of June, I believe.
And did you see Lyle Menendez after school ended until the memorial service for his parents?
I don't believe he went back.
Just answer the question, Mr. Stevens. Did you see him for the remainder of June?
Yes, I
Where?
think I did. He didn't leave. Once school ended, he didn't leave right away.
Okay, once he left Princeton, did you see him again until
don't
the
think so.
memorial service?
I don't think so.
So there was at least part of June? Yes?
Yes,
There was all of July,
yes,
and there was virtually all of August because the memorial service was the very end of August. Is that correct?
yes.
Now, so when you said you saw him every day, that difference to you is just a slight exaggeration? Yes or no?
It doesn't appear so now, no.
It appears to be a lie, doesn't it?
No.
It's not a lie.
No, I didn't deliberately lie.
Ooh, I didn't deliberately lie.
I just said, I knew him for
Yeah,
6
that
months
shows you
before and
lied.
for 6 months after the murders, and I saw him on a daily
Yeah,
basis.
that's an impeachment.
It wasn't a lie. I didn't deliberately lie to anybody.
You reviewed
So you lied, right?
all
No, I
of the
didn't
police
deliberately
reports in
lie.
this
That
case
wasn't the
prior to
question, dude.
testifying before the grand jury, did you not?
What do you mean by the police reports?
The reports that the Detective Zoller wrote up in this case. Do you remember, right before the grand jury, reviewing the police reports and telling Detective Zoller that they were amazingly accurate? Does that sound familiar to you?
I reviewed notes of his interviews with me. And I remember vaguely saying something like that.
Something like they're amazingly accurate?
About my interview, yes.
And do you remember in one of those police reports telling Detective Zoller that you had lied in the primetime interview, the primetime interview being the television show interview?
I don't recall that. Perhaps you can refresh my memory.
Your Honor, I'm going to direct his attention to the interview of May 7th, 1989.
Yikes.
Do you want to show it to me?
I will, Your Honor.
This is why talking in interviews is not necessarily a good idea, Alec Baldwin. You never know when it's going to be used against you when your testimony changes.
Right. Must be 90. If I can have just a minute, Your Honor. There are a number of reports here. When you were given reports to review, were they both typewritten and handwritten?
I don't recall.
Danny Wallace, is this better? So you want me to boost my audio a little bit. Usually I'm louder than the rest of it, so that's kind of a refreshing thing. Hopefully
Mr.
it's better.
Stevens, direct your attention to the notes here, which appear to be in Detective Zoller's handwriting. And I'd ask you to just read as Z for Zoller, G for Glenn.
Mhm.
I ask you to read this paragraph here.
Read to himself.
Yes, just to see if it refreshes his recollection.
Just to see if it refreshes your
I've
recollection
read it.
about what you said
It's-
before.
It's sort of difficult to, it's not in complete sentences. I don't.
Detective Zoller. Do you remember having that conversation with Detective Zoller about your interview on prime time?
I'd be lying if I said that I remember it now. I've seen what you have there, but I don't exactly recall discussing that primetime live interview with him.
Well, let me ask you then. Did you intentionally lie in the primetime interview?
No, he already said
I
he
don't
didn't
remember the
intentionally
extent
lie.
of the primetime interview. I don't remember what was discussed in it. I haven't seen it since I did it. Well, except for when it was originally aired.
Okay, so you don't remember what you said on prime time, and you do not remember having a conversation with Detective Zoller in which you said you were, quote, less than candid on prime time.
That less than candid statement sounds familiar to me.
But if you did tell them that you saw Mr. Menendez every day up to the death of his parents for the preceding 6 months, and every day after that, that would in fact be a lie. Is that correct?
It's not accurate.
Thank you. Now, I believe that you've testified that Lyle Menendez didn't have much spending money. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And we're talking about before his parents died.
Yes, that's correct.
So he was not able to buy the things that he wanted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And did he have credit cards?
Yes, I believe he had some credit cards.
Did you ever see him use his credit cards?
Before the deaths of the parents, not that I recall.
Did you and Lyle have something in common because of where you had both lived earlier in your life?
Yes, that had come up at one point in our friendship. We realized that he had lived in an adjacent town to my hometown for a period of years.
And what was the name of the town he had lived in?
Muncie, New York.
And did he buy a dog?
Yes,
while he was back
yes, he
there?
did.
And what did he name the dog?
Muncie.
And were you with him when he bought the dog?
I believe so.
Do you remember where it was he bought the dog?
There was a puppy farm on Route 1 near the university in Princeton.
Adopt, don't shop.
J.P. O'Neill Kennels, does that sound
That
familiar?
does sound familiar, yes.
And you were with him when he bought the dog?
I believe so.
And how did he pay for it?
I don't recall.
Sorry, I just know of so many dogs that need
Your
to be
Honor,
adopted.
For the purpose of refreshing.
No
his
shade to
recollection, I would
anyone
like
that
show
likes
him
to
the
have a
document
purebred
the
dog.
prosecution has
That is
in their discovery,
absolutely anyone's prerogative.
which appears to be a
But
Citibank
I
credit
just know of
card
so many
bill
that need homes.
in which J.P. O'Neill Kennels appears as a church. And counsel, will you stipulate that this is a,
Are you gonna mark it?
yeah, good market? This is.
May we
You wanna do
press,
it out
please?
of the presence?
Yeah.
I'll just show him. for
Yeah,
right
that's
now.
fine.
If I can, I'd like to mark it and then we can discuss.
Yeah,
it.
all right, it'll be marked exhibit 58. That's 58.
Fair point, Marie. Fair point. True, Melissa. True.
Yes.
Mr. Stevens with Chillingwood's now been marked as Exhibit 58. Do you recognize just from format what this is?
It looks like a credit card statement.
And is there an entry on here that says J.P. O'Neill Kennels?
Yes, there is.
And is there a price?
$185.50, I believe.
And is there a date?
That one down from there. Is that 5-1?
Microphone.
Is that 5-1, it looks like?
Okay, as in May.
May 1st, I believe, yeah.
And what's the date of the statement?
May 24th, 1989.
And what is the name on the credit card holder?
Joseph L. Menendez.
And does this appear to be a credit card transaction which would match up with the purchase of the dog Muncie?
Yes, correct.
And did you two sort of share that dog?
That would be fair to say.
And there are a number of other credit card entries for this month, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So showing that he did in fact use his credit card.
Do you remember being with him when he bought a Movado watch before his parents died?
That sounds vaguely familiar. I had forgotten about that.
Okay. And do you remember him losing that watch and then having to buy another one to replace it?
Again, that sounds vaguely familiar as you're telling me this. I'd forgotten.
Do you remember him buying a belt for you from Adam Ross?
Yes, that's correct. Without my knowledge, he surprised me with it in the car after we walked out of the mall on one occasion.
And was that because you had admired that belt?
Yes, I had expressed an interest in buying that belt.
And it was a $200 belt, wasn't it?
I believe it was about $125.
And you couldn't afford it, could you?
Not at the time, no.
And Lyle bought it for you?
Yes, that's correct.
Did you want to establish a time frame when those events occurred?
I'm sorry, this was prior to the parents' death, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you mentioned that Lyle complained about his Alfa Romeo.
Yes.
Was there something wrong with it?
Well, when I went out to visit him after the parents' deaths in Marina Del Rey around Christmas time, I don't believe the car was running correctly.
That he had problems with it running?
Yes, I believe so.
And he let you wear one of the Rolex watches, is that correct?
Yes, for the week out in California is when I think he started that practice.
Which week out in
The
California?
week of the arrest.
So this was in March.
Yes.
And it's your testimony you never wore the watch before that time?
Excuse me?
Is it your testimony that you never wore one of the Rolex watches before that week in March?
No, that's not I might have. But it started on a regular basis. You wear one watch and I'll wear the other one so I don't lose it.
Okay, but before that week, you wore it sometimes, didn't you?
That could be, yes.
Could be or is?
I don't recall specifically.
Where's that watch now?
I have no idea.
Did you sell it?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
Who did you sell it to?
Uh-oh.
I sold it to a neighbor of my father's who's a jeweler after the arrests.
Uh-oh.
And the $1,400 that Lyle gave you on the plane,
Mhm.
he said when he was concerned about being arrested, what happened to the $1,400?
We used it to finance our trip back across the country.
Oh, no.
Myself, Hayden Rogers, and there was a friend by the name of Cole Kruger who had met us out in California and came back with us to the East Coast.
Oh, he's not so squeaky clean anymore.
That Lyle's parents were arrested. I mean, that his parents died until the time Lyle was arrested. You spent a great deal of time with him, is that correct?
That is correct.
And did you stay in hotel rooms?
Yeah, the definition for that, or the term for that is conversion. Because he knew that Lyle had given him his watch, not because he was giving it to him as a gift. He basically gave it to him as a oh God, I'm totally brain farting right now. The term for it when as a custodian for his watch. So he seems like he understood that when Lyle was giving him his Rolex to wear for him, he didn't intend to give it to him as a gift, right? It's not something that transferred ownership over to Glenn when he gave it to him to hold on to for him. Same thing with the $1,400. The $1,400 was intended to be used for purposes of helping Lyle out here, right? So the fact that he's admitting on the stand basically to converting an item that's not his and then selling it and keeping the cash and then taking the $1,400 to finance his trip home. when that's not what that was for either. I mean, I'm sure that the prosecution told them, hey, look, you're testifying on, on our side, so we're not going to prosecute you. Don't worry about that. But this doesn't look good. This doesn't look good to a jury. I mean, this now looks like someone who, on paper wants to be friends with him, wants to be his best friend, wants to be, whatever. But when tempted, he is going to, take advantage of his the so-called friend, right? So yeah, he's not quite so squeaky clean like he looked before. All right, let's continue.
In the Princeton area, I spent the night at a hotel with him on 1 or 2 occasions, I think.
And who paid for the hotel room?
He was staying there. Lyle did.
And did you eat meals with him?
Yes,
And who paid for the meals?
I believe Lyle did.
Yeah,
And
Kit Kat,
how many plane trips
opportunist.
did you take
Good.
with him?
Good term for
I
it.
believe just the
That's what I'm
one
thinking.
the week of the arrest.
And who paid for that plane trip?
Lyle did.
And when you flew out at Christmas time, who paid for that plane trip?
Lyle did.
Have you talked to people about being able to make some money off of this case in terms of writing a book or making a movie?
It has been discussed before.
And who have you discussed this with?
Robert Rand had suggested something after the case was all over.
And did you talk to Eric Tam about this also?
I don't know Eric Tam very well.
Do you know who Eric Tam is?
He was a friend of Lyle's that lived in Princeton, I believe.
Have you ever spoken to Eric Tam?
I met him once or twice.
And when you met him, you asked him for information about the family and about the defense, didn't you?
I don't recall.
And do you recall, well, let me go back. Now, getting back to the incident with Donovan Goodrow, you said that you and Hayden and Greg sat there and talked to Lyle about why he should throw Donovan out of the room.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And he was very reluctant to do that. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you thought this was absolutely the right thing to do. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you kept pressure on him to get rid of Donovan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know if the morning that Donovan was thrown out of the room, there were phone calls from both Lyle's father and mother with regard to this subject?
I don't recall if it was on the morning of when Donovan was thrown out, but I do remember listening in on a phone call between Lyle and his father and mother. They were in an automobile somewhere, calling from the car phone and speaking to him about that, as well as the model girlfriend.
Christy?
Yes.
And they were telling him to get rid of both of them?
I remember specifically them saying to get rid of the model girlfriend, and the father had said something about with the Donovan thing to just cut his losses.
And get rid of Donovan?
That was my impression.
And did you have the feeling this was something that Lyle was very reluctant to do?
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
I think there's been testimony about what Lyle said about it. I'm sorry. Did Lyle say anything? I apologize, Your Honor. Did Lyle say anything about not wanting to get rid of Donovan?
I don't recall if Lyle said anything.
How did
like
he
that.
appear on the day that you all helped Donovan leave?
He appeared nervous, edgy.
Appear upset?
Yes, that's fair to say.
Did he appear sad?
Yes, that's fair to say.
And when he told Donovan he was going to have to leave, who helped move Donovan's stuff out?
I believe Hayden did most of the moving out. The truck pulled up next to the window of the dorm room. They were about on the same level, and I believe Hayden was going in and out the window, loading the stuff into the truck.
Who brought the truck back?
I don't recall who went and drove the truck around. I don't recall.
Was Lyle in the room when Hayden was moving the stuff out?
It's possible, but I can't say for certain.
Okay. And were there a number of Donovan's things that were left in the room?
The only thing that I know of specifically is the wallet.
And where was that wallet from the time Donovan left until you moved out? Or Lyle moved out in June?
I don't know.
Hold on for a second, okay? Okay, thanks. Mr. Stevens, when did you first tell the police, if you remember, that Lyle had stolen the wallet?
The first time I remember discussing it was with Detective Zoller on the telephone. I believe it was the day after one of the television shows had released that the guns were purchased with Donovan's license.
Now, if I told you that that show aired on May 17th, would it be fair to say that your conversation took place on May 18th?
Most likely.
Now, after Lyle's parents died and you went to the memorial service and started spending time with Lyle, did you feel that you were close to him at that time?
Yes, that's fair to say.
And is this also a period of time in which you considered yourself his best friend?
He was my closest friend at the time, I would say so.
Okay. And you had warm feelings toward him and cared about him as a friend?
Very much so.
And you felt loyal toward him?
Very much so.
And he was spending a lot of time with you and seeking your advice, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And he was asking your advice on cars and condominiums and businesses and stuff like that, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How old were you at the time?
This is, what's the year again?
89.
89, I was approximately 20.
And did you have any particular experience in real estate at that time?
No.
No.
Did you have any experience in restaurants?
No.
Did you know anything in particular about cars?
No.
And
course
yet
not.
he was looking to you for advice and trusting you as a confidant. Is that true?
Yes, that's correct.
And this is a time when you say you were very close to him. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that would have been starting in early September of 89.
I believe so.
Do you remember in September of 89, September 18th of 89 in particular, 2 to 3 weeks into this close friendship, telling Detective Zoller that Lyle was arrogant and condescending and spending money in an offensive way?
I don't recall that specifically, but I might have said it.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at the police report?
Yes, it would.
Quoting you? May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
This is the September 18th, 1989.
Secret Mix Girl, this is what I keep hearing in my head every time they say summer of 1989 is I hear the summer of 69.
You want to see this police report before?
It looks like the police report that I was given prior to the grand jury testimony.
And the police report that you commented at the time was extremely accurate.
Yes.
And directing your attention to the second paragraph.
Mhm.
Does that indicate that you told
Let me
Detective?
read it. Okay.
So by September 18th, 1989, you were already telling the police
extremely negative things about Lyle Menendez. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's correct. He hadn't been treating me very, very well at the time.
You know, the memorial service was the very end of of August.
Yes,
This is 3 weeks later.
yes,
You've just told us that this was a period in which you were close and friendly and trusting, and he was trusting you. And yet you say he
Yeah,
wasn't.
I felt very close to him. I considered him my best friend, but after the murders, he changed.
Well, you hadn't seen him for 3 months before the murders.
That's correct.
You've just told us here on the stand that this period following the murders was a period in which you were very close.
That's correct.
You were spending every day with him.
That's correct.
He was paying expenses for you.
That's,
He was asking your advice.
yes.
And yet in this period of time, you say he wasn't treating you very well.
He was being condescending towards me on several occasions.
And that made you angry, didn't it?
Oh, yes. That's fair to say.
And on October 24th, 1989, you tell the police, first, that you had lied to the reporters in giving your interviews, and secondly, that Lyle had offered you a job.
Excuse me, Your Honor, that mischaracterizes the testimony of the first part.
I'm sorry, you're...
Rephrase the question.
On October 24th, 1989, you spoke with Detective Zoller with regard to an interview you'd given to John Johnson.
Okay.
You remember that?
I don't specifically recall the interview with, the discussion with Detective Zoller.
Would it refresh your recollection to look at the report?
Yes, it would.
Did you read the second and third paragraph to yourself?
Mhm. Yes, okay.
Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
Now, does that report refresh your recollection as to this conversation?
With John Johnson?
With Detective Zoller?
Yes,
And are you telling Detective Zoller that you're concerned that some of the negative statements that you've made to Mr. Johnson have been printed, and this may affect the way Lyle feels about you?
yes, that's correct.
And do you tell Detective Zoller that what you're going to do is just tell Lyle that the statements are out of context and that Mr. Johnson misquoted you?
Yes, that's correct.
And in this same conversation with Detective Zoller in October of '89, you tell him that Lyle has offered you a job. Is that correct?
Is this here? Where's that? That's the fourth. It says here, and I recall that it says Lyle further asked him to drop out of school and go into business with him. So that's what I spoke to him about, and I do recall him offering me a job.
And what was he offering you?
It says $50,000 a year in here.
No, I'd move to strike if he has no independent recollection.
Does that refresh?
Objection.
Thank you. Does that refresh your recollection as to what the nature of the job was that Lyle had offered you?
I don't remember being offered $50,000 a year, but like I said, these are extremely accurate notes. So it's possible that sum was kicked about.
But that's what you told Detective Zoller.
Yes, it appears so.
So we're now in October of '89, and are you still consider yourself Lyle's best friend?
Well, friendship transcends a lot of things, but homicide's not one of them, so no.
Well, Did you believe at the time he'd killed his parents?
I wasn't sure. There were times that I thought maybe, there were times that I thought maybe not.
Well, Mr. Stevens, I'm a little confused. You've told us that you were his best friend from the time
I
that
felt,
you,
okay,
from the time that you went to this memorial service, at least until he was arrested. You were his best friend, his confidant, his business partner, traveled with him, saw him on a daily basis.
yes,
And it is clear that what you are doing is reporting to the police on a regular basis anything negative you have to say about him. Is that correct?
yes, that's correct.
Now, is that your definition of friendship?
The reason I felt it was my duty.
Yes or no? Is that your definition of friendship?
No.
On October 24th, you place a call to the police department, to Detective Zoller.
Excuse me, what was the date?
October 24th, 1989. The article is published by the Los Angeles Times. And Eric makes some sort of has a reaction to this. Is this correct?
Eric called me and had a reaction to a phone call from Detective Zoller
About the article.
about an article that was to be published.
Okay. And so you then called Detective Zoller and told him what Eric's reaction had been. Is that correct?
I think so. That's possible.
Okay. And is that because you thought that Eric's reaction was incriminating?
It was suspicious.
And on May 17th, 1990, you see on television that Donovan Goudreau's license was used to purchase shotguns. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so on May 18th, 1990, you called Detective Zoller, whom you've talked to probably 6 or 8 times by now. Is that fair to say?
It's probable.
And you tell him for the first time this story about Lyle stealing the wallet. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you remember telling him also in that interview that that wallet sat in that room all year long?
Yes.
Do you remember May 17th, 1990, giving some information to Detective Zoller and saying, essentially, I wanted to tell you because this may make the difference between a conviction and them getting off?
That sounds familiar.
Have you been watching this show on Courtroom TV?
Yes.
I mean, this show, this trial.
While I was still on the East Coast. While I was still on the East Coast, yes.
Okay. How much of this trial have you seen?
A fair amount.
What's a fair amount?
I don't know. I watched, when I was on the East Coast, I watched it when I was in my room.
Did you watch it every day?
I watched portions of it every day, yes. Lyle
brought you in to help him work on the restaurant business. Is that correct?
That was not the original intent, I don't think. But
I wonder if maybe so this is where, looking back on these types of trials, like that was a huge deal in the Depp trial, right? That's the rule about witnesses, right? Is they are not allowed to watch the testimony because the idea is that they can then shift their testimony to be the same as someone else's, right? To line up their testimony with another fact witness. It's not something that we want in these trials. But I'm like, I don't know, maybe they're just going to preserve that on the record and then make an argument later that there should be a mistrial because, or that that all of his testimony should be taken out off the record. I don't know, but I'm confused as to why she's continuing with the cross-examination. I don't know if maybe that's a rule that came into effect after trials like this one. I don't know. I think this was, to my knowledge, this is the second trial that I know of that was publicly televised across the country, right? Dahmer was the first one, I think. And then this is, I think, the second one. So I'm wondering if maybe that was kind of because this was like new technology at the time to like allow people to mass broadcast these trials, that maybe that was something that they didn't exactly have a rule for, so long as they weren't in the courtroom or something. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. This is a very interesting twist here. And also, I mean, for me, that's a huge warning sign about his credibility here. Like, how much of his testimony has just been shifted to sort of like meld with other witnesses, if he's been watching it literally every single day. Portions of it. He says portions of it, maybe not everything, but I don't know. I don't like it.
But ended up to be the case. I ended up working in the restaurant. I believe Hayden was brought back originally to do the restaurant thing, and I was supposed to help him look at real estate properties.
And were you being paid to help him look at real estate properties?
Once I left school in February, yes.
And
just for that, there was only a short time from, I left school in the second or third week of February. Lyle was arrested in the first week of March. I don't recall if I got a paycheck in that 3-week time or not, but I understood myself to be in his employment.
All right, how much longer do you think your examination will be?
Probably about 15 or 20 minutes.
Well, let's take a recess at this time, ladies and gentlemen. We'll resume at 10 minutes after 11. Don't discuss this case with anyone. Don't discuss it among yourselves or with anyone else. Don't form any opinions about it. We'll resume at 10 minutes after 11. I'll ask that counsel be here at 11 o'clock so we can discuss some other matters with you.
Audience, stay seated until the jury.
With the witness here.
Could we ask the witness to remain for a minute, Your Honor?
Yes, the witness remain here and be here at 11 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
All right, counsel, you can look at this transcript here.
Thank you. I'd like the court to remain for a minute, if you will.
Sure.
The jury leaves.
All right, the jurors have left. Ms. Lansing?
Yes, Your Honor.
No, we're going to discuss that issue at 11 o'clock. I just want to know, you got something else?
Yes, I did, Your Honor. I would like this witness to be admonished at this point, since he's in the middle of his testimony, to not discuss his testimony or anything about this case with the district attorney or the police in the break.
Well, I won't do that. I think they have a right to consult with a witness while he's testifying, and that request is denied. All right, we'll be in recess until 11 o'clock.
May I be excused?
Come back at 11.
Okay.
That's also different.
All right, there was a matter that counsel wished to pursue in regards to a visit to some individuals regarding potential danger to the defendant. Did you wish to pursue that?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is people's position still that it's not within the scope of the direct examination?
No, that's not my position. My position is its prejudicial effect outweighs its probative value.
All right, if you want to inquire of the witness, you can do that now, and we'll hear what it is that you're trying to elicit.
Mr. Stevens, did Lyle Menendez express to you some concerns with regard to his safety?
Yes, he did.
And did he identify people or groups of whom he was afraid?
Pardon me, Judge is vague as to time. What time period?
We're talking about after the parent's death.
I don't think specifically he ever told me whoever killed his parents.
Do you remember testifying yesterday that he expressed a fear of the mafia?
I don't know that through direct conversations with Lyle. I don't think if it was the mafia. I just, Richie had mentioned something about the mafia.
Your Honor, we gave back the transcript. I'm sorry, I was wondering if I might read it to him and refresh his recollection as to what he said yesterday.
Yes. Who is Richie?
Richard Wenskowski, the bodyguard.
Mr. Stevens, and I'm reading you from yesterday's transcript on page 68, starting at line 10. Question of Mrs. Bozanich of you was, did Lyle ever say anything to you about why he wanted bodyguards? Your answer was, well, there was the whole idea that maybe the mafia had been responsible for this murder, and that I understood that he was fearing for his own person. You remember saying
Yes,
that?
that's exactly correct.
So he thought that the mafia had been responsible for the murder and therefore he was afraid of the mafia.
Yes,
Is that correct?
he thought possibly the mafia was responsible. If it was the mafia that was responsible, then therefore that was who he was to be afraid of.
And he expressed to you that possibly the mafia was responsible. Is that correct?
Yes,
Now, had you told Lyle Menendez, as well as other people, that your family had some mafia connections?
yes, that's fair to say.
And
Okay, let's make sure we don't have any jurors come in. Okay, thank you.
So once
with
again,
whom
this
in the
portion,
mafia was your family?
I should say this portion is as indicated by the judge, outside of the presence of the jury. This is they're testing out some bit of testimony here to see if it's something that they can testify to later. That's what it seems like.
Connected.
My grandfather on my father's side, a long time ago, I guess approximately 35 or more years ago, was friends with a man by the name of Anthony Salerno.
And is Anthony Salerno somebody who's also known as Fat Tony Salerno?
I believe so.
And who is he?
He,
Object to calling for hearsay.
Just as to this witness's state of mind and what might have been communicated to the defendant, yes. Go ahead. Who do you understand that person to have been? Is he still alive?
no, actually, he died in prison last year.
Okay, and who is it that you understood that person to be?
Well, not at the time. At the time of his death in prison, he was reputed as being the head of the Genovese crime family.
And who's the Genovese crime family?
A New York Cosa Nostra organization, I assume.
Okay. And so you had told Lyle, as well as others, about this connection in your family. Is that correct?
Yes, it was mentioned on occasion.
And did you have occasion to take him to New York to meet someone?
Yes, we went to New York together to meet somebody on an unrelated matter, yes.
And was that meeting connected with his fear for his personal safety?
Yes,
And was the meeting with someone whom you knew? Or
Yes.
was it someone that Lyle knew?
someone that I knew.
And someone you were introducing Lyle to?
Correct.
And what was that man's name?
The man's name was Anthony Negri.
And did you tell Lyle that Anthony Negri was also connected to the mafia?
I don't believe I had any knowledge of that at the time.
And what was the purpose of this meeting with Anthony Negri?
Mr. Negri owned a security company in New York City. Lyle was looking for a full-time bodyguard, and he thought that he should get Hayden a handgun permit. So I suggested that we go see this gentleman, since he owned a security company, that perhaps we could get Hayden a legal handgun permit to carry.
Now, he owned a security company in New York,
In New York City, yes.
and you were all living at the time in New Jersey? Is that correct?
When was the date? Well, I assume that's true. I've always lived in New Jersey since I've been at Princeton.
Okay. So you were going to see this man in New York to get a gun permit for Hayden to carry in New Jersey? Is that your testimony?
We wanted to ask him how we go about getting a handgun permit.
And it's your testimony here that you never indicated to Lyle Menendez that this man had any connections to the mafia?
I don't recall that I had any knowledge of that at that time.
Do you have knowledge of that now?
Not any concrete knowledge, no.
Do you have reason to believe that it may be true?
Only through things that Lyle has told me about meeting this gentleman. Apparently, there was a portion of the meeting where I was not in the room, and Lyle told me that this gentleman said some things to him that led him to believe that he was connected.
Are you nervous about saying in open court that somebody who's alive now is connected to the mafia?
Well, I'm nervous discussing the whole subject, to be honest.
The whole mafia subject?
Yes.
Because you think if you name names of people who are connected to the mafia, you may get in trouble?
No, it's just I don't want to implicate somebody that I have no knowledge of really being involved.
But you've heard that he is?
Well, he's indicated that he heard it from your client.
Yes,
so-
that's
Did you
correct.
hear from any other sources that that may be true?
No, not that I recall.
Was Hayden present at the meeting?
I don't think so. I don't recall.
But this was a gun permit for Hayden.
We went to originally ask for a gun permit for Hayden, and Mr. Negri immediately told us that he was probably too young. I think I recall that. And so then Lyle started asking about for me, and then also possibly for himself, a handgun permit.
Who else went to this meeting?
I have a recollection of maybe somebody else being there, but I don't recall who.
Did you
else.
get there in a limo?
I don't recall how we got there.
Do you remember if there were bodyguards with you?
I don't think there were.
Okay. I have nothing further this witness.
All right, did you have any examination of the witness on that subject?
Yes, Your Honor. This person you've indicated as Anthony Salerno, did you ever take Lyle Menendez to see him?
No,
And when's the last time you saw Mr. Salerno, if at all?
I've never met Mr. Salerno.
You just heard about his legend? And that is very
That's
true.
correct. I've seen pictures of him with my grandfather.
All right, and then there's no connection, well, is there any connection between these, Mr. Salerno and Mr. Negri, to your knowledge?
No,
Okay, how's it you know Mr. Negri?
he was my father's business partner for a while, years ago.
The name Salerno, is that a family name of yours?
No.
What is your family's name?
Well, my last name now is Stevens, but it had been changed just prior to my birth.
And what was the name before?
Stevelman, Stevelman.
T-E-V.
Elman.
And you're not Italian?
No,
Are you Jewish? Half?
half Jewish, half German.
So you never took Lyle Menendez to see Mr. Salerno? I take it at the time was in prison? In 1989?
I don't recall when he was originally indicted.
Do you consider yourself to be an expert in organized crime?
No,
Have you ever taken any Department of Justice organized crime courses or FBI courses?
Of course
anything like
not.
that?
no.
All right, we don't have to go into that aspect of it. It's just what he communicated to the defendant. That's the issue.
Now, I believe you indicated that you learned some things from Lyle Menendez at the conclusion of your meeting with Mr. Negri, is that correct?
Yes.
And what kind of things did you learn from Lyle Menendez?
There was just one little incident. He told me that while I was in the bathroom, that Mr. Negri had told him, I think I know who was responsible for your parents' death, and you have nothing to worry about. I'll put out the word that you're to be left alone.
Now, when you went to this meeting with Mr. Negri, did Mr. Menendez ever indicate to you that he wanted to meet with someone in order to put off the mafia? In other words, to try to make peace with them or something like that?
I don't recall that that was any motive for our trip to see Mr. Negri, no. I thought it was just for the handgun. I'm trying to recollect, but I think it was just for the handgun permit.
Was that your only meeting with Mr. Negri?
That was my only meeting with Mr. Negri. I later learned that Lyle went back and saw him again later without my knowledge.
Okay, how do you know that Lyle went to see him again?
He went with a friend of mine by the name of Ted Remick, who has told me such.
Right, but you don't have any direct knowledge from Lyle Menendez, is that correct?
That's correct.
May I have one, please?
Yes.
I have nothing further.
All right. Did you wish to briefly argue the matter? My inclination is to permit this area of inquiry since it does relate to the areas covered by the prosecution on its direct examination and would be relevant, and I don't find it to be prejudicial or unduly time consuming. Did you wish to argue the matter further?
I don't think so.
All right, then if you want to proceed with that, the defense may do that. All right, I don't know if we have all our jurors back yet. There's some outside. Okay, let's let them come in first and we can take a count and make sure we have everybody.
I have one more.
Yes, well, wait till we let the jurors come in. All right, counsel had something else?
Actually, two things. I just
I don't know
wanted
why
to make
the
a point that I forgot
screen
to
went
make that
dark.
it seems that the information about Mr.
It'll come
Salerno
back, I'm sure.
is irrelevant to these proceedings, but the information about Mr. Negri is what should be at issue, not whether or not his grandfather had a friend who's never met named Tony Salerno.
Yeah, I think it can be edited down to what occurred, and without going into family histories that really don't have any bearing on
May I be
this.
heard on that?
Yes.
It's our position that
Yeah. Don't worry, guys.
Mr.
That's
Stevens
why I made that
has
screen
talked
smaller, is because
openly about his
the
family
screen's black
connections
for
with the
me as
mafia,
well.
that main connection being, or the one he
Let me
talked
see
about.
here. Give me.
He's with Mr. Salerno.
When you say talked openly,
They're
you
still
mean
kind
with
of
your client?
arguing here, so let me see if I
And for
can.
the people and their
Yeah, see,
cross-examination
this
of
is what
defense
happened.
witnesses.
Yes, as long as you're not pulling things, I don't see that that's happening at this point.
Surround.
Okay. Here we go.
All right, everyone is present. The jurors are all present. In the case of People versus Lyle Menendez, you may continue your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
Buffering.
Mr. Stevens, you indicated that in the conversation surrounding the eviction of Donovan from Lyle's room, there was some discussion about Donovan had borrowed some money from Lyle.
No, Lyle had some money missing, and we had thought maybe Donovan was responsible for that.
And you think it's about $150? Is that what you said?
That's a vague recollection. That number seems to be familiar to me.
Okay, so that was money that was just sitting in the room, and it was in an area that Donovan would have had access to?
I don't know.
Did you know him to loan money to people?
Objection vague as to who.
I'm sorry, did you know Lyle Menendez to loan money to people?
I don't know if I have any specific knowledge of any loans that he's made. I don't recall.
Now, at some point, you began working for the restaurant, is that correct?
Yes,
And you were involved in Lyle's purchase of that restaurant, or you were aware when he
I was
buying?
present at the purchase, yes.
And were you aware when the meetings were held with Lyle and his uncle Carlos and Steve Goldberg, who was a lawyer?
Repeat the question, please?
Are you aware that before Lyle bought that restaurant, there were a great number of meetings with Carlos Ferralt, his uncle, and with a lawyer named Steve Goldberg?
Objection lack of foundation as to personal knowledge.
I'm asking if he's aware.
Yeah.
Well, again, depending on how he knew about it, it could still be hearsay. So let's go at it one step at a time.
Okay.
Was he present, or did the
All
defendant
right.
tell him about that?
Were you present at any meetings between Lyle and his uncle, Lyle and Steve Goldberg, or all three with regard to the purchase of the restaurant?
I was present at meetings with Lyle and his uncle Carlos about the purchase of the restaurant. I don't remember meeting Steve Goldberg that far back.
Okay. And how many meetings were you present at?
I don't recall.
More than 2?
It's possible.
More than 3?
It's also possible.
And did it appear that his uncle Carlos was going to have the ability to either make this happen or stop it?
Well, Lyle was taking his uncle's advice very seriously about whether or not to purchase the restaurant. You mean his ability to make it happen?
Well, did he need his uncle's consent?
Yeah, I believe his uncle was the executor of the will. So I guess he was in charge of
Okay.
the estate and the
an
money
important
that was
point.
necessary for this. I'm not sure if the insurance money was enough to cover the purchase of the restaurant.
But it seemed that Uncle Carlos was going to have a decision-making role in this. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And were you there during the times that Uncle Carlos was making statements to that effect, that he had to be convinced this was the right idea?
I believe so.
That's important.
And you told us that you went with
Because it
Lyle,
shows that he's
when
got
he made
somebody that
offers
is
on
that
two
is
different
signing
condominiums.
off
Is
on
that
these
correct?
purchases.
I was with Lyle for paperwork regarding 2 condominiums and a patio home. If you're referring to offers,
And it's not just signing off on these purchases. Like when we're talking about the administration of a will or a trust, the executor, the trustee, the person that is basically in charge, has the power of the purse, so to speak, with the estate, they have full custody of all of those funds, right? Custody, like the Rolex watch that this guy was just supposed to hold on to and not sell and just keep the funds. There are all kinds of duties involved with somebody who is an executor or a trustee when they are administering a trust or an estate. And so the uncle has a lot of responsibilities and a lot of powers. The uncle can say, no, you should not be spending your money this way because that is an irresponsible thing to do. And I need to make sure that this is going to set you up in a good way. So I mean, of course, we haven't heard about the relationship with the uncle. I don't know if maybe he'll testify. It would be nice if he does. That would be probably, it sounds like pretty helpful to the defense potentially. But Kit Kat, to your point in the chat about I wonder if you got a kickback here. I'm not sure if you're referring to Glenn or to the uncle. So when somebody is administering a trust or a will, the person who is in that role, the executor or the trustee, depending on whether it's a trust or a will, they do get paid for their time, a reasonable compensation. That is built into this area of law. They can choose not to take it if they don't want to. There are a number of reasons why someone might not want to, but generally speaking, the person in that role is able to take a reasonable compensation because it's time invested. It's, they sometimes have other expenses that are incurred that will be paid for out of the estate. So anyway, so all of that is to say that this is a very important point for the defense here, is to say, look, they didn't just like automatically get access to all these funds and just go on some crazy spree, like on their own. They had to get permission to get these funds and to make these purchases. And so, yeah. So like I said, this is very important here, in my opinion. Props to the defense for bringing this up. I wish that they had brought that up right off the bat, because I feel like it could potentially get a little bit lost in the sauce because we're like in the middle of the cross-examination here. I don't know. Maybe not. We can't see what the jury is doing, obviously, so we don't know if they're paying attention or not. But like I said, to me, this is very important.
You know what? I don't.
Two condominium, I believe the district attorney has given you paperwork on one condominium and one patio home.
That's she showed me. Yes, that's correct.
Now, there was a third condominium as well. Is that right?
I believe so. Yes.
And is that the one that Lyle's parents were buying for him at the time that they died?
Yes, I believe it was in Stewart's Watch or something like that, or
Canal Point? Does that sound familiar?
Well, Canal Point is the one that they showed me. There was also the apartment in Stewart's Watch. I don't know if that was involved prior. My recollection is vague in that area.
Let me take you back one step at a time. One condominium was actually purchased. Is that correct? Is that your knowledge?
Yes, I believe.
Time.
Overall.
Thank you.
I remember a telephone conversation. I didn't hear, wasn't privy to the conversation, but Terry Baralt was speaking to Lyle's father on the phone, and she got word from Lyle's father that it was okay for Terry to go ahead and purchase a condominium for Lyle to live at when he was going to Princeton.
Okay. Now, the other two that you looked at with him in Canal Point, the two that you have the paperwork on, he looked at them but never bought them. Is that correct?
I don't know. She said something about that they were never closed on. So.
Okay. And when was it that you went with him to look at these? Do you remember?
We went to look at them a few times after the death of the parents, I believe. We went to look at them many times. It's difficult with the dates and the times.
Okay. Were you with him when he had discussions about who would live in the patio home?
Yes.
And was that patio home to be for himself and his brother?
I remember him discussing himself. I don't remember a mention of his brother living there, but it's possible that it was discussed.
Now, when you talk about an apartment in Stewart's Watch, did in fact Lyle get an apartment for you and Hayden in Stewart's Watch?
Well, originally Lyle got that apartment for himself and for Hayden. I think when he got it, I was still in school. And then by the time I left school, Lyle wasn't spending much time there, and I moved in there.
And did you pay rent there?
There was once Lyle had been arrested, yes, but not while Lyle was around. Well, I was supposed to pay it out of the salary that he was paying me.
And did you, or did you pay it separately?
I paid it out of the salary that I was paid, I believe.
Do you know who a man named Harry Mansman is? Does that name sound familiar?
Not at all.
Did you deal with any accountants for checks?
Oh, yeah, there was a CPA that I guess Uncle Carlos was trying to get somebody to deal with the books.
To audit the books
Yes, I guess so.
while you were running the business?
I believe so. I remember an
Is it-
accountant.
Is it your testimony that the apartment was paid for out of your salary or out of money that the business took in?
Part of the time, I remember making payments for rent at some point when I was living in that Stewart's Watch apartment.
How long did you live in that Stewart's Watch apartment?
Probably from a while after the time of the arrests until probably around July of that same year, from March to July.
And how many times did you pay rent there? You personally, with your own money?
I really don't recall.
And was the business also paying for a car?
They paid the down payment on a car for me, yes, and I was also supposed to make, I think, the car payments out of my salary.
But the business, which was Lyle's business, paid the down payment on the car.
Uncle, or the business, or Uncle Carlos, or somebody gave me money for the down payment on a car because the lease had run out on my Firebird, and part of my contract agreement with Lyle was that he pay for a car for me if I was going to leave school because my parents couldn't afford it.
Okay, so he was paying for the apartment, he was paying for the car.
Yes.
He was paying for plane tickets when you traveled, hotels, meals, etc. Is that correct?
One plane ticket. I never, I spent a night in a hotel once in New Jersey just because he wanted me there. We weren't traveling around staying in hotels.
Do you remember testifying before the grand jury that he never bought you anything before or after his parents' death, and when he tried to give you things, you said no? You refused?
Prior to his parents' death, I refused often when he attempted to buy me things. Afterwards, in the course of our business things, there were things that had to be paid for that weren't my responsibility.
Like your car and your apartment?
Yes, it was part of our contract agreement.
And the only things that you remember accepting from him before is the $125 belt?
That's the only thing I recall.
But there might have been other things.
Maybe, but nothing that sticks out specifically in my mind.
So when you testified before the grand jury that he never spent any money before or after?
If you could read me back the grand jury, please.
Reading from page 151. Excuse me, let me start on page 150 at line 27. Question, did Lyle take you to the Princeton Inn or other nice places? Was it just to eat or win your friendship? Answer, are you referring to the Nassau Inn question, perhaps? I don't remember a reference to Princeton Inn, but if you were referring to prior to the Menendez murders, Lyle never had much money. So when we would go out as friends, we were responsible for our own meals or entertainment. He never paid for me for anything. Even after the murder, although Lyle had offered several times to buy me things, I wouldn't allow it.
That is accurate testimony, I believe so. And I still believe that to be true.
Okay, so the buying you things doesn't include plane tickets and cars and apartments and belts.
Once I was once I was in his employment, it was understood that that was his responsibility to pay for those things.
Okay. When did you start running his business?
I can't recall the date. There must be a record of it somewhere, but I don't recall offhand.
Well, can you get me close?
Sure. I left school in February of 90, I believe, and sometime soon thereafter.
Now, when you left school, can you get a leave from Princeton just by saying, I'm tired of the school and I want a little break, or did you have to give them a different reason?
I believe you can just say I'd like to take a year's leave of absence.
And what did you tell them?
I told them, I don't recall what
Irrelevant.
Overall.
I don't recall what I told them why I wanted to take
Do you
a year off.
remember telling them that you had psychological reasons for wanting time off?
I remember at the time I was going through problems with depression, yes.
And so you told them that you wanted the time off for that reason, is that correct?
Yes,
And you didn't tell them you wanted the time off to run Lyle's business, is that correct?
that's correct.
So you lied to them, is that correct?
No, I took the year off because I was depressed. I didn't like the school and I wanted a year off. And it was convenient that Lyle offered me a job at the time that would pay my way for that year off.
Didn't you quit school so that you could work for the business?
I mean, he basically
I was
testified
going
to
to
that
take a year
before.
off at the end of my sophomore year. I took it earlier. I took it halfway through the sophomore year because Lyle made me this job offer.
Okay. But you didn't tell Princeton that that was the reason you were leaving, when you were leaving, is that correct?
I don't recall mentioning
I
that.
don't
to
know.
them.
This bit is a little bit potato.
So you started running the business in February of 90. How long did you run the business?
Until approximately July of 90.
Now, how big a business was this? I mean, how many employees? How much money did it make a year?
I don't recall now. I had
Alicia, facts.
I guess it grossed.
You can be depressed.
I only
and
know
also
this
work.
from Lyle's estimates.
You
that
can
it
be
grossed somewhere
depressed and
around
also want a different
$700,000 a year
opportunity.
prior to
Right.
him taking it over.
Okay. And how many employees were you responsible for supervising?
There were about 5, I guess, around.
And what were your responsibilities at that restaurant?
There were things like payroll was part of my responsibility. I had a hand in a lot of things. I don't recall exactly what was my distinct responsibility. And I did a lot of the stuff with Gus Tangelos, and I don't recall exactly. Supervising the employees, being at the cash register for many hours a day, the payroll, and we also went through like cost-cutting measures and things like that. I didn't know much about the restaurant business. I was learning as I was going along.
You were only 20, right?
I believe so, yes.
And did you do the bookkeeping? Did you keep accounting records, or did somebody else do that?
I did that. Well, now that you refresh my memory, there was the accountant and there was a woman that came in, and I was supposed to sit down with her and give her expense records and stuff. Gus Tangelos, myself, and her, and she would make the notations in an accounting book on a weekly basis that
Okay.
Uncle Carlos had hired her.
So you didn't do the accounting, you just gave her the paperwork?
I didn't do specific accounting. I was involved in keeping the account records.
Did you ever tell anybody that when you were running this business, it was $1 million a year business?
Yeah, it was roughly, that's what Lyle had told me, that it was grossing somewhere,
Well,
700,000. It was a rough estimate. I'm sure I've said that many times.
That it's $1 million a year business?
Yeah.
And did you tell people that you were the one that kept the accounting records?
I might have said something along those lines just because of my connection with the accounting records.
But you didn't keep the records?
No, the woman had them.
Okay, so if you told people you kept the accounting records, that really wouldn't be true, would it?
It's an embellishment.
And you've told us there were 5 employees. Do you remember telling anybody that you supervised 20 restaurant employees?
The only time I can remember is saying something like that is on my resume.
Can I approach, Your Honor?
Yes. What is it?
It is a resume that says Glenn Stevens on top. Mr. Stevens, do you recognize that resume?
Yes, I do. It's my resume.
What is that?
That's mine. An old one, but that's mine.
And does it indicate on their work experience?
Yes, it does.
And does it indicate that you kept the accounting records for Chuck's Restaurant, which was $1 million a year business?
It says keep accounting records of businesses grossing $1 million annually.
So that was an embellishment, I think you said.
Yes, absolutely.
And you say on the resume that you supervised a payroll of 20 restaurant employees.
That is also an embellishment.
So we went from 5 to 20.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else on that resume that's an embellishment?
Probably.
Such as?
I don't know specifically.
Well, let's start at the top. Princeton University. Was that true?
Yes.
The recipient of the Memorial Scholarship for Academic Excellence.
I was a recipient of an Irving Van Gilder Perrine Jr. Memorial Scholarship. It's on here, yeah. Irving, E-R-V-I-N-G, capital V-A-N, capital G-I-L-D-E-R, capital P-E-R-I-N-E, Jr. Memorial Scholarship. I was a recipient of that, yeah.
That was something you got in high school?
Actually, no, it was, I was given it upon attending Princeton.
Okay. And it says you went to Westminster School, is that correct?
Yes.
It says you were valedictorian, is that correct?
Not exactly.
Okay.
I believe I had the highest GPA in the senior class, but being that I had not been a 4-year student there, they don't allow a non-4-year student to become valedictorian, I believe.
So you wrote in your resume you were the valedictorian, but you were not.
That's correct.
And what about the recipient of the Yale Book Award? Is that true?
I really don't recall. I don't believe so. I don't believe that's true, no.
Would it refresh your recollection to see the awards page from your high school yearbook?
I can look at it, sure.
So we're going through more
And I'd like to mark this
honesty
as
issues.
Defendant 60. So that's not, or Exhibit 60, I apologize.
That's not it.
I have to clarify, though, I didn't write this. My girlfriend at the time wrote that.
When you received the employment,
Yes, I did.
read it before you gave it to them?
Yes, I did.
Did you know you were presenting a false picture of yourself?
Yes, that's correct. I probably would have been stupid not to.
Was it stupid not to present a false picture of yourself?
When you go for jobs, we're instructed at Princeton University to embellish a little bit on the resume. I mean, you have to sell yourself.
Sell yourself?
Directing your attention to a very poor Xerox copy, but doesn't it say Westminster 1988?
Yes, it does.
Is that the yearbook from your school?
I believe so. It's a supplement to that.
And does it have a page marked commencement prize list?
Yes, it does.
And does it have the Outstanding Scholar Award?
Yes, it does.
And that's not your name, is it?
No, it's not.
And does it have the Yale Book Award?
Yes, it does.
And you're not Susanna Bridget Baker by any chance?
No, I'm not.
Is she the one that won the Yale Book Award that year?
It appears so.
When you were spending time with Lyle, you told us yesterday that he was concerned for his personal safety. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you told us yesterday that the people that he was afraid of included the mafia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Stevens, had you talked to Lyle Menendez and to other people about your family connection with the mafia?
Yes.
And what was that family connection?
Like I said, a gentleman by the name of Anthony Salerno was a close friend of my grandfather, and my father often referred to him in the home as Uncle Tony because that's how he was known to him.
And is he also known as Fat Tony Salerno? Is that
Yes,
another
that's
name?
correct.
And who is
I keep
Mr.
thinking of Joey
Salerno?
Fatone from
Or who was
NSYNC.
he?
How people would call him Fat Tony.
Well, he was reported to be the capo or the head of the Genovese crime family.
And who's the Genovese crime family?
I believe it's a New York-based Cosa Nostra operation.
And this is the man who was referred to as Uncle Tony.
By my father, yes.
And you spoke to Lyle and to other people about this family connection, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have occasion to take Lyle into New York one time for a meeting with a man with regard to Lyle's safety?
Yes, that's correct.
And who was this man you met with?
He was an ex-business partner of my father's. They owned an industrial chemical company together, and they were no longer affiliated in business, but the gentleman owned a security agency.
And what is that man's name?
Anthony Negri.
And this is someone you knew and Lyle did not, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, why did you take him to meet with Mr. Negri?
Lyle had indicated a desire to get a handgun permit for Hayden. So while Hayden was in his employment, Hayden could also act as a bodyguard, because the bodyguards that, like Richie Wenskowski and that he had hired, were very expensive. And this way he could cut costs by using somebody that was already in his employment as a dual purpose.
Okay, and so let me withdraw that if I may. Did Hayden go with you to this meeting?
I don't believe so.
Who went?
I think it was just Lyle and myself.
And why were you meeting with this particular man?
Like I said, he owned a security agency, and we thought that he could give us some advice on how to go about getting a handgun permit for Hayden to legally carry a handgun.
And where was the security business that he owned?
In New York.
And where were you and Hayden and Lyle living?
In New Jersey.
And did you receive any information which led you to believe that Mr. Negri may have been connected to the mafia?
Only from Lyle.
And what was that information?
At one point during our meeting, I went to the bathroom and then we left. And Lyle told me after we left that Mr. Negri had made some comments to him when I wasn't in the room that I think I may know who was responsible for your parents' death, and don't worry about it. I'll put out the word that you're to be left alone.
And putting out the word meant telling the people in the mafia that?
I have no idea what it meant. I assume possibly that's what it meant.
So you have some idea of what he meant.
Whatever happened to the restaurant?
It's still there. It went back to the original owner, I think, because Lyle missed a payment. That was my guess, but I don't know that for sure.
He was in
Your Honor, I
jail.
move to strike the answer now.
All right, the objection sustained. The entire answer is stricken, other than the reference to it's still there. Everything else is stricken. Jurors admonished to disregard the balance of the answer.
Thank you. Did you have a conversation with, let me back up a step. Do you know who the former owner and now present owner of Chuck's is?
Yes,
What's the man's name?
I believe it's John Argyris.
And did you have a conversation with him after he got the restaurant back?
I've seen him since, I think.
And did you tell him that you were happy that he got the restaurant back and Lyle lost it?
I don't recall making that statement.
Might you have made that statement?
It's possible, but I don't recall it specifically.
And we touched before on Eric Tam.
Mhm.
Now, do you know who Eric Tam is?
I have met him, I believe, twice.
And did he take over the business after you stopped working there?
I don't know. I know that he was being groomed to do so, but I don't know if he took it over once I left.
And did you ever have any conversation with him on any topic?
Yes,
And did you ever have a conversation with him specifically with regard to writing a book or making a movie about this case?
I don't recall.
You might have.
I might have.
And did you ever have a conversation with him in which you were asking him for information either about Lyle's family or about the defense?
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
I don't recall.
But you might have.
I might have.
And you were funneling any information you got from any sources to the police. Is that correct?
I don't think that's a fair characterization of what I was doing, but certain things became privy to me that I then forwarded to the police, yes.
And you were doing this the entire time that you were in Lyle's employ and were his trusted friend, is that correct?
I wouldn't say the entire time, no.
Oh, what period of time were you not giving them information? We have the first date on September 18th.
Yes, but, okay, that's correct.
So between, say, September 1st and September 18th, you were not giving them information about him. Is that correct?
That is correct.
But from September 18th, 1989 on, you have continued to provide them with information.
I don't recall. It's possible that it happened. I don't recall speaking to the
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it
the
took too
district
long
attorneys
before
or
he
the,
started working with them.
officers between that original interview in September and when I spoke to Detective Zoller on May 18th. I might have, but I don't recall.
Well, I think I've already shown you interviews.
That could be. I have a problem with the dates, like I said.
Okay. Well, you saw the documents for October 24th,
Oh, yes, right.
You
Okay,
remember?
that's correct.
and there were, then you saw the documents also for several interviews in May, phone calls that you made. Prime time was on May 17th, 1990.
Mm-hmm.
You made
Yes,
several phone calls that day and the next day. Is that correct?
several. I don't know. The one that you showed me, I do remember.
I think I showed you one from the 17th and one from the 18th.
Okay, that could be.
Okay. And those are ones we have documented. And you've
Okay.
indicated you've had over 20 conversations. Is that correct?
I said that could be. I have no knowledge of the exact number or where it's around there, probably.
We didn't finish with your resume. Were there any other embellishments on there?
Like I said, most likely.
Any that stand out at you?
Yeah, I was not a member of the Princeton peer tutoring program.
Which appears under the activity section.
Yes, that's correct.
How about the Chem Lawn Services Corporation? Did you solicit $200,000 in new accounts?
I'm not sure if that number is correct or not.
That might be an embellishment.
Yes, it might
also.
be.
Did you actually work for them?
Yes, that's correct.
What else on there do you recognize as an embellishment?
At Hudson Fabricating, which no longer exists, I don't believe that says I supervised technical work of over 40 employees. That's probably an embellishment also.
What was the correct number?
I have no idea. It was a long time ago.
Anything else?
Not that I noticed offhand.
Now, is it your position that this learning to embellish is something that Princeton taught you?
Well, when this was written by a girlfriend of mine, she was also had been a Princeton student, had graduated, and told me, "Don't worry, everybody does it. That's what you're supposed to do."
Okay.
So it
So you
didn't
just
violate
listen to
any
your girlfriend?
personal code of honor you have?
Ooh,
Or do you have one?
ooh, tough questions.
Yes, I do have a personal code of honor, and it probably violated it.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
There's no good
Yes,
answer.
sir. It's gonna go past the.
Doesn't matter what it
start.
says.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Stevens?
So I think though, what we're going to do is we are going to, we still have like another like half hour here of his testimony. That's going to be redirect, maybe some recross, maybe some redirect. So I think we're going to pause it here for next week and we'll finish his testimony next week. But yeah, that's a good cross-examination. It's funny because Leslie Abrams is the one that gets really a lot of the love here for people that like the defense side. But this attorney, and I'm so sorry, I wrote down her name. Let me find it. Jill Lansing. So she does a phenomenal job here of just very slowly and methodically just deconstructing the legitimacy of this guy, right? Because he starting off, I was talking earlier about how I'm like, yeah, I totally believe him. He seems like a good guy. He seems like a good friend. Oh, he went to the memorial service, all this kind of stuff. But here now we see he's not quite so squeaky clean, right? He sold the Rolex, he took the $1,400, and he also, had testified before that he didn't really get anything from Lyle Menendez, but he was having his car paid for. He was having his apartment paid for. He was also getting a salary from him. And it seems like the narrative that the cross-examination kind of starts to paint here is, well, okay, but you were on this gravy train from this guy. He was giving you all kinds of benefits during your friendship. And now that you see that the writing's on the wall, that gravy train is going to go away, maybe you're also seeing how much media there is around the death of his parents and kind of seeing where things might be going. It looks like maybe you're going to just kind of jump ship, right? It's like this starts to feel with his testimony and the testimony of all the other friends, supposed friends, like it's like rats leaving a ship, right? These are friends of convenience. These are friends who are not exactly ride or die friends here, right? And this is a good question that came up in the chat. Love Dreaming Peach says, so was it considered being a bad friend for helping police find a murderer? So I'm confused about this idea. I mean, that's the right thing to do, and it's a crime not to help, isn't it? Well, it's not necessarily a crime not to help. It's a crime to intervene. It's a crime to get in the way of the investigation, but there's no obligation to come forward necessarily with information. And the truth here is that, I think that's a good question, actually, is that, helping the police to gather enough information to convict someone. But does he know if it's murder or if it's self-defense? I don't know. I mean, that's a good question, but it's just the circumstances around this, though, and the other aspects here, right? The interviews with the press, the talk about a possible book deal, all this kind of stuff starts to feel like, he's trying to get something for himself after he's been benefiting from this relationship. And but there's also this idea that Erik and Lyle Menendez, may have been just kind of buying their friendships. Like what kind of substance was there to all of their relationships around them? There's also, this question from Love Dreaming Peach: is it just me, or do these friendships seem romantic in nature more than platonic? I don't know. There is a weird tension in all of these. I don't know that I sense any romance to them, but I do sense a feeling of loss from them. And it could just be because they really did benefit from these friendships. I would say that these were all surface level friendships on both sides, right? So I don't particularly see Lyle and Erik as being totally victimized by these friendship circumstances, by the flip in these friendships, right? Because we've also seen how Lyle Menendez flipped on a dime on Donovan Goudreau, who he apparently had a lot of tension. He had a lot of reluctance to get rid of him. But then once he's gone, he says, "Hey, I've got his wallet. Let's get let's get him back," essentially is kind of what he's saying here. So it's there is a certain element of these guys not having real relationships with really anybody. And I think a lot of that just comes with their upbringing and the culture of their family in which they were brought up. Maybe they don't know how to have those kind of relationships, or didn't at the time, leading up to this. But all of these relationships are just very, very surface level, it seems like. Aaron Morgan says, question, did all the boys' friends turn on them? I did see in the chat, there was someone who indicated that one of Erik's friends stood by him. And so I don't know, but I don't know anything about that. Other than that, it's so far, all of them have. And does that make them good people or bad people? That's a tough question. And it seems like it's on a case by case basis, right? Like Craig Signorelli, for example, looked super slick. He definitely looked like someone who was a friend of nothing but convenience. This one, I think that Glenn Stevens, I get the impression that he actually did view him as a friend. But when it came down to being enticed by certain benefits, he was a bit more easily swayed by those enticements, more so than any sort of feeling of empathy and loyalty and all that kind of stuff. Can I blame them? I don't know. Because I've never been in that position. That is a very difficult that is a very difficult position for anyone to be in, right? To find out that this person that you are friends with, that you are associated with, is under investigation by the police. That can be very scary to these guys that have these ideas of like what they want to be and the big things that they want to be in life, but don't really seem to have any real life like skills. They could very well be very intimidated by this whole idea that these guys are being investigated by the cops and thinking, I'm gonna work with these cops and screw this guy. I don't know. We're friends, but we're not that kind of friends. I don't know. I don't know. I can't say that I fully judge people in that circumstance, because that can be someone that's in between a tough spot and a hard rock. Wait, what is it? A rock and a hard place. Sorry. Brain fart. So, but it's how eager were they to work with the police, I guess is a question for each of these individuals, right? Is it because they were contacted and the police were contacting them and, kind of indicating to them, hey, like we are going to be up in your space, you might as well work with us? Or is this someone who says, ooh, suddenly this person is in a disadvantageous position and maybe I can get what's mine and take advantage of them? That's a different kind of situation, right? So yeah. Miranda, I think Hike is hopefully how to pronounce your last name. A question says, does it matter that you aren't under oath for an interview? No, because this is a prior statement that is inconsistent with what he is saying in court now. The prior statement doesn't need to be under oath in order for it to be a source of impeachment, because it's still a statement that's inconsistent. So you can show that to the jury and say at some point, oh, Hewick, sorry. Okay. Miranda Hewick. I see that in the chat. So sorry. Okay. I will try to remember that for the future. Okay. So yeah, a prior inconsistent statement. It's just, remember in Depp v. Heard, they used, pretty sure I think they did. They used her interview from that Dutch TV show, right? Which, similar circumstance, right? Not under oath. It's even more helpful if the prior statement is under oath, but you can look at other reasons why somebody might want to say something, give a statement that is different before to the press or somewhere else, and then say something different when they're under oath. So yeah. Aaron Morgan says, question, do you think the prosecution went after the boys so hard because of the possible mob ties? I don't get that impression. I think that they're under the impression that the mob thing was just completely false. It was just to try to get the police off of the brothers' scent. That's the impression that I have. And I think that the police were thinking along those lines. I think that the reason why they went after them so hard was because this kind of this story kind of shocks the conscience of a lot of people, right? And I think that the DA's office, just the same. This is a story where, regardless of whether it's murder or self-defense, you have two young adult men killing their parents in a very violent way. This is not something that we typically expect to see in our society, right? It's the kind of thing that can be a bit terrifying for people and also very intriguing in a lot of ways. This is why we're watching it again. This is why there have been countless documentaries about this and articles and movies and all kinds of stuff. So I think that is probably the greater reason why the prosecution so aggressively went after this case, is because of the way that it shocks the conscience. So I don't know, but maybe I'll see some interview at some point that says otherwise. So, okay. That for me about does it. This has been wonderful. Thank you so much for joining me through this. Today's testimony has been pretty good. I've been enjoying it. I hope you have too, or at the very least found it interesting or informative. If you haven't already done so, and you enjoyed it, like the video. It really does help with the YouTube algorithm gods. And if you are new here and you want to see more stuff like this, we do this every single Monday. Next week, we will be back. We will finish up Glenn Stevens' testimony. We will be hearing from, I think, Donovan Goudreau, perhaps some others as well. Yeah, so it should be good. And what was I going to say? Yeah, that for me about does it. Thank you to everyone that is watching. Thanks to everybody that is in the chat. Hey, Kurt, Uncivil Law. I see you jumped in the chat at the very end here. And of course, as always, thank you to the mods for helping to usher in great conversation and, allowing for space for people to disagree with one another, see things very differently. This case is one of those where people have some different kind of impressions, and I see the dialogue in the chat, and I love it. So thank you to everybody for engaging in that conversation, and to the mods for making sure that everybody is able to voice their opinions and in a way that they are not going to feel intimidated by other people or pressured by other people to think otherwise. All right. That about does it. I will see you guys in the next video.